we can just YOLO in if you want. There are some people I were hoping that would come that I don't know if they're coming, but I don't know that I can do anything about that. But
That's fair. It freezes every second for this guy. I'm sorry, my
oh,
friend.
you need a
What?
condition removal if that's the
Yeah.
case.
One day in the far future, I will be Twitch partner, and you will be able to reduce the quality so your internet can deal with it. But that day is not today, unfortunately. Okay. All right then.
All right.
Uh, let's get this thing started.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. Hello, guys. This is a discussion, a clash of titans, as it were, between Brazil. Say hello, Brazil.
Hi, Brazil.
Oh, I should have expected that. And of course, Nemesis, our returning guest.
Hello,
And
everyone.
the topic is the PvE meta. So let's get started with the definition of the meta. Brazil, how would you define the meta?
So, to me, I've talked a little bit about this in the past. I would call the meta the most optimized and efficient way to do content. That is a dungeon or a fractal, and that is not necessarily exclusive to Berserker's Armor. Berserker's Armor and offensive stats, I think, currently seem to be the best way to go about content because there is there are mechanics like reflex, there are mechanics like blocks, active dodging, stuff like that, and tankiness, healers, defensive stats are not necessarily required. However, in the instance where Heart of Thorns come through and stuff like that is required, then the meta could very well have tanks or healers or any that, as long as it is the most efficient, quickest way to do something. And also, just a caveat on that. Well, I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'll save that for when we. That is the definition I'm going to.
Is that something you would agree with, Nemesis?
Well, I agree with his definition. I want to add a few things to that. A lot of people use the word meta, especially lately, in throughout gaming in official podcasts with esports and stuff like that. A lot of paid theory crafters for companies use the word meta to describe something. And the majority of people like, oh, this is a really cool word. What do I do with it? And everyone just says meta, meta, meta. And I've been in a lot of PvP, a lot of dungeons, a lot of all type of content. Everyone just uses the word meta. But I'm not going to go into the definition of the actual definition because it has a lot of words that it's difficult for me to pronounce. But the term in general, if you check the wiki, it's basically a very abstract way to define something that everyone agrees to. So it's, even if it's wrong, if the majority uses it, then it's the meta, regardless if it's gaming or anything else. So it might be the most efficient way, and everyone agrees that that's the most efficient way and says, this is meta, this is meta. But a lot of the people don't even know what the word is or what it defines, because according to some people, this is the meta, and according to other people, something else is the meta. And they don't know what the word is, and they don't know what it stands for. I wanted to offer a small clarification on what I see the word means.
All right, excellent. In that case, why would you say that the current meta has come into existence? Would you like to start us off on that, Nemesis?
Well, I don't know if you guys watched the video I did on the PV. It was like an analysis of the current PV system, Guild Wars 2. The current meta, the Berserker meta in Guild Wars 2. That means, if anyone is watching that doesn't play Guild Wars 2, that means you have to play a certain specific build which optimizes the Berserker stat gear, which is basically bursting, as much bursting as possible. The current Berserker meta started, like I said, I'm going to keep it short because that was a 20-minute video. It started due to a lack of endgame content. That was in the beginning. And people who were with the game since the beginning know this stuff. In the beginning, the developers panicked a little bit because the game still needed a lot of polishing. It was a great start in the beginning. There weren't that many bugs, and the auction house, which was really huge, took like 5 days to become fully operational. I'm like, whoa, this is just 5 days. And they had a lot of optimizing to do, server loading times and stuff like that. And they couldn't focus on a lot of additional end game content. And everyone rushed to the game, got to finish all the small dungeons, how many there were, and starting quitting. So they rushed to release fractals. I'm sure most people know that. So that didn't work so well because by that time everyone was just so used to doing the dungeons really fast that the fractals weren't giving enough reward, and they didn't want to add a new upper tier in gear, and they ended up doing that eventually anyway with the ascended gear stat. But it was still too late. They got the ascended stats and then they went back to grinding dungeons. Because of a lack of endgame content, like satisfying, people tried to challenge themselves and at the same time obtain more profit. And that meant do the same dungeon faster and faster and faster. Like, faster dungeons, more profit. It's just how it is. And they get bragging rights. Look, I can do this in 5 minutes. Look, I can do this in 4 minutes and stuff like that. And because the game was had a lot of issues that no one bothered to fix at the time, and I'm going to come back to this later on. What initially I was like, me and a lot of people that were like really into the game, and they quit now, but like pro, not necessarily pro at the professional level, but experienced gamers. We're like, okay, that's going to get fixed soon, and that's going to get fixed soon, and it never did. And what was once seen as like really buggy and frowned upon became the norm, all for the sake of effectiveness and doing stuff faster for more loot and more bragging rights. So that's my short story.
Okay. Someone in the chat was pointing out that the AI in Guild Wars is somewhat lacking. Would you say that the lack of ability that the AI has to deal with players and the lack of sophistication the AI has, does that contribute to this to the issues that the game has in the end game?
Well, definitely. That's one of the problems. And the thing is, I don't think they had enough time in the beginning to develop the game as much as they wanted. And going from breaking away from the limitations of the Holy Trinity, I keep talking that, into something a lot more advanced, you have to keep into consideration a lot of the time, like they did with the movie Snowpiercer. The movie Snowpiercer in the beginning was a lot more complex, and about halfway in, they decided, okay, this is too much, people are not going to get it, and they dumbed it down. So I'm not sure if the lack of sophistication for AI was like maybe a lack of time or budget, or maybe it was a calculated decision to like give something casual because casual works. And that escalated into something a lot worse. I don't think, like I always said, I don't think they are incompetent. Because if someone is incompetent and makes really bad AI, that person is going to get fired and is going to get replaced by someone more competent. And they're going to make proper AI. Could be a lack of time, plus like, okay, we're going to leave it like this, and people will get used to it, and we'll see where we go from there. It's definitely became part of the problem. And the bigger issue is if they made like really heavy AI, could have backfired, and the game could have crashed for different reasons.
Do you think that will? Do you think the problem will be somewhat alleviated then, because they are bringing in a more sophisticated AI with Heart of the Thorns? There was a presentation recently of how ArenaNet are designing their AI to more intelligently use its abilities and so on and stuff like that.
Should I go?
Well, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I think no matter what they do, if they leave the AI as bad as it is, and if we get content like more grinding content, if we don't get raids. I saw an interview when an ArenaNet official announced raids briefly, but no one said anything about it since then. If they're not going to release at least 10 raids, at least 10 with proper AI, the game is going to fail, like big time. People got fooled in the beginning and they sold 4.5 million copies, which is huge, like huge. Blizzard has like 12 million, and they had a really strong franchise going way back and strong foundation to build upon. And if they're not going to deliver this time, no one is going to get fooled again. And there's no way to save this game up, to rise it from where it's fallen.
Okay, strong words. Brazil, do you have anything to add on to the reason why the current meta is as it is?
Yeah, I have a couple of points to mention. First of all, I want to talk about AI and bad AI, and this will relate to something a little further. But when I used to play paintball a lot, and for the little while I PvP in Guild Wars 2, whenever I go in there, line of sight is a mechanic in real life when you're playing sports where you shoot at each other's with little pieces of paint. You can LOS people in paintball, and people fall for it. People will come after you, and you can surprise them. And in PvP, a point that a lot of people seem to like to make on the official forums is that PvP is harder than PvE because PvP you fight against real people. But I've seen some players in PvP that are LOS just as easily as mobs in the game, so I don't know that I necessarily agree with that point. And if you play League of Legends, there are some pretty bad players, and that's entirely a PvP game. So bad I think in some cases the AI it's easy to understand. There are some bosses that have mechanics that I think are good. And then in Ascalonian Catacombs, I think this was maybe at or around the time that they fixed South Sun Cove. Maybe it was a little before or a little bit after, but they redid Ascalonian Catacombs, and they changed, I think, the Spider Queen. They changed all of the Gravelings to have like knockdowns and put on bleeds. They changed all of the final bosses, and people really, really, really hated that. And a lot of people, there were threads on the forums about how they ruined AC, about how the Spider Queen's too hard for like a year. Probably even now, people are still probably complaining about the Spider Queen. And I think adding better AI or more mechanics, as long as they are good mechanics to a fight, I think that is a very, very good thing. And I think people are used to not expecting too much from a lot of the AI in the game, and so whenever suddenly there is mechanics that you have to pay attention to, or things you have to coordinate, or you have to actually remember to press the dodge button, that kind of gets unsettling for people, I think, and that makes them mad, or they don't know how to react to it, whatever the case is. And whenever Liandry came out into the Royal Terrace, not the Royal Terrace, the Crown Pavilion, I guess is what it was called. A lot of people complained that it was too hard, that they couldn't beat it, but it was a good fight, had good mechanics, it was awesome. I really liked it, and then people started realizing, hey, there are ways to abuse Deadeye Dunwell. He's maybe not easier, but we can just blind him, or we can reflect him. And then I figured out, hey, I can just kill Liandry against the wall with bear form. And the Elementalist figured out I can just fiery rush into the wall. And people figured out, hey, we can deep freeze the Spider Queen, and we can ignore all of the mechanics at all because we can just explode it before it can react. And those aren't necessarily things that I have a problem with. I don't mind mechanics like that, but the state of completely disabling a boss, I think that is very, very easy to do. You don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to do it. With the break bar, If something has a break bar and it's very, very difficult to stun it, but whenever you do stun it, it's stunned for like 5 seconds and you can just DPS, DPS, DPS. If there are sufficient mechanics in place that make it difficult, disable a boss and then you can just blow it up, I don't mind that. But I think being able to, even with pug elementalists that don't know what they're doing, all they have to do is put down an ice bow, and then you can freeze the Spider Queen, which does have mechanics, which does require you to dodge, and then pugs can explode it. That causes content to feel stale. That causes things to just go into autopilot, and people just want to, I guess, do stuff to farm and whatever. So, it's interesting. I think the meta has largely come about because there hasn't been too many new revamps to dungeons. There hasn't been a lot of new permanent content for people to do, and so people are just kind of bored and looking for ways to farm. So I don't know. I think that's where the meta ultimately came from. So that is going to be my input on that question.
And adding a little extra something to what Brazil said, I said in my video when it was a highly controversial video on the PV, the current PV, the current state of PV in Guild Wars 2, I anticipated the fact that because of how long people were used to grinding like really not necessarily effective, because I explained if you can do a dungeon in 3 minutes, everyone else can do a dungeon in 3 minutes. And you make like 300 gold, but everyone has 300 gold, so everything is going to cost 400 gold, and the end result is meaningless. You win nothing. All you did was grind a lot, and the majority of people are still not going to see it that way. Every time something becomes harder, like, well, it's not fair. We didn't farm as much as other people farmed. I just got here like last month, and now you're telling me that the content is harder. What about people that did this content in 3 minutes for a year? They have an unfair advantage. And just like you said, they're going to be upset about it. But if the current content is left more or less the way it is, these dungeons, they were abandoned. In my opinion, they were abandoned. So leave them abandoned for people who like to grind their way into an early grave. Fine. You can do that. And give something more meaningful in the form of raids for hardcore gamers, people who actually want to do something meaningful, and of course give a much better reward. So if you want to grind and do COF like 300 times a day, and you can do that, it's fine. And in the same time, in one day, you should be able to get the same amount of reward for your playing time doing something a lot more difficult, but only one time. So it satisfies a much wider variety of people. So without upsetting those who remain for the grind, because now you have a lot of people who stayed for the grind. If you're going to take the grind away from them, they'll be like, hey, what's up? So yeah.
Okay. Anyone have any final comments on that, or shall we move on?
I kind of do, but I hesitate getting into it. I guess I'll go ahead and mention it now because I'm looking at the topics and I don't see that there will be another place to talk about that. I am kind of afraid of, well, I'm excited about raids and the potential of that happening, but I feel like a lot of people, this was a big problem with WildStar. A lot of people thought, oh my god, this game is new, it has raids, holy shit, this is going to be the best thing ever. It's going to be something new for people that want hard content. But then they didn't realize that if you want to be like a hardcore raider, that's like hours a day, multiple days a week. It's like having a second job almost. And people got mad and quit WildStar. People didn't want to get attuned. People said, this is too much. I'm actually, I'm not as hardcore as I thought I was. And so I'm slightly worried about that aspect. I'm kind of worried about people thinking that they're going to be hardcore and wanting hardcore content, and then whenever they actually get it, they realize, actually, I just wanted to grind. So I don't know. That's
all the more reason to have grinding and hardcore.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty fair point, because I like mechanics. I want harder stuff to do. I I get bored of dungeons in Guild Wars 2 right now very, very quickly. I get bored of fractals very, very quickly because none of the fights have changed for over 2 years. I don't know, but I think that's really all I have to add there.
There's something I would ask is, I mean, what would you have ArenaNet do? I mean, do you just have things that kill you instantly and they're harder and harder to avoid? But by what kind of mechanics would you be looking for to make these fights more challenging and more hardcore?
You can go
Like,
first if you want, Nemesis.
I made the suggestion like almost a year and a half ago, when they first uh, theory crafted around the idea to break the build system into two separate categories for PvP and PV because they couldn't manage the balance. And I thought, well, why don't you have monsters which mimic player classes, player decision, player movement, and player classes? And if you have like mob classes, for example, which mimic the players, you can actually balance the game only for PvP and have the PV match the PvP more or less. Because monsters are going to be dumber than players, obviously. They're not going to counter you, so you can give them uh, much higher HP and a little bit more overpowering damage. So you have like really dumb, overpowering players. And it could work. And that means no one-shotting, no nothing that absurd. Because we're getting back to the old Holy Trinity system with taunt and tanking and everyone healing and all that stupid stuff. So just have monsters which have a lot of abilities. Like every single monster should have like 6 or 7 abilities. Every non-grunt, every non-trash mob should have 6 or 7 abilities. So if you tackle him with conditions, he should do something to against that for a little while, nothing too major. If everyone melees him, he should do like AoE all around him. If people blind a lot, if they like to blind a lot, he should go in stealth and execute one of them. Or I don't know, infinite possibilities. That's one way to do it because, or for example, should be in one part of the dungeon you just have to survive, and that should really work towards people that want to play healer builds or tanky builds. And if you like to play a healer build, you can just take the path of the dungeon, which requires you to survive a lot. And I mean like invincible monsters which do a lot of AoE and damage that you cannot dodge or stuff like that. You just have to survive until a timer expires or a mantle falls off or something. So the possibility is there, they just have to do it. If I can think of those things like in 5 minutes, I'm sure they can as well.
Do you have anything to add to that, Brazil?
I think that sounds fine. Yeah.
All right. In that case, let's move on. Is the meta beneficial or detrimental to Guild Wars 2 as it stands now? Anyone want to go on that?
Well, I'll let Brazil because I have a lot to say.
Okay. All right. That sounds fine. So, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, at least for me, when I think about this, is I think about elitism, and that's not exclusive to people who just speedrun and people who play meta builds or people that, whatever. I think that can also fall onto people who are like very, very preachy about why playing a tank build is the best thing that you can possibly do to, or like max magic find, which used to be a thing. There were people that would like max out on magic find. It was there's all, I think elitism can, different types of people can fall into what I think you would consider an elitist. But the meta as it stands with Berserker's gear and power builds and running through things, you see a lot of stuff in the LFG looking for one member, Zerk, $, all paths, whatever. And they ask you to ping your gear, and if you ping, like, I don't know, Knight's gear or something, they just kick you out of the dungeon. and that's not something I'm always. Well, I guess I'm not really ever a fan of it. There are certainly times where I want to just get through the dungeon as quickly as possible, just so I can move on to other things, so I can make something in Photoshop or sit around and think about not having friends, or there are other things I have to do. Getting through the dungeon quickly is, something I want to do sometimes. There are also times where I don't really care. I'm happy to go through Twilight Arbor on a condition damage warrior and have 5 necromancers, or I guess 4 other necromancers in my party, something like that. And I don't mind, as long as people are having fun. I think it's okay. So whenever something evolves where people farm COF all day and they only want like 3 warriors and a guardian and a mesmer, or I guess 4 warriors and a mesmer, and they kick everyone else, I'm not really a fan of that. I like to include other people a lot of the times. I like to give people a chance, and whenever I do like a raw with my friends or something, if a necromancer joins the party, or if an engineer joins the party, or a mesmer, whatever, I don't really mind. But again, if I'm playing with my guild or something, we're looking to speedrun and do things as quickly as possible, then I don't usually play a necromancer or a class that is not going to fulfill a specific role in a speedrunning environment. So that is beneficial or detrimental. I think it's detrimental when people think that they have to kick everyone else, they have to not ever consider how much damage a guardian might do because 100 blades does, 60,000 damage or whatever. I think that can be bad, but I don't know. I don't know that it's, I guess, beneficial. It can be beneficial because it gives people a way to speedrun if they want to speedrun. And if people just like clearing content quickly, then I guess that gives them an out to that. But I don't know. I think it's probably easier to make a case for it being detrimental than it is beneficial. But I think there are aspects where it can be beneficial.
Okay. Nemesis, take it away. Unleash the fury.
Big topic. So, I'll just start by saying that when COF, when they tried to establish the record for a COF run, like 2 years ago, the fastest time was 5 minutes and 60 seconds, something like that. And after that COF run, a lot of people whisper me saying that we are starting to get kicked from COF dungeons a lot. The necromancers are getting, are you going to say something or do something? And I thought, well, I'm not sure exactly what I can do. And then I realized, how about I do a COF run only with necromancers? And I did a COF fast run with 5 necromancers. And our fastest time was 6 minutes and 10 seconds or something like that. I don't actually remember. I know the difference was around 30 to 40 seconds. So we were like 40 seconds slower than the fastest in the world. And a lot of people competed, a lot of teams. And no one was faster than that particular team. And we were 40 seconds slower. That automatically means if you kick someone for being a necromancer or for being not a meta class, if you don't get your perfect pick of choice in the next 40 seconds, you're already falling behind in terms of overall effectiveness. Like, you are falling behind. That's just how it is. At best, you're going to win 40 seconds. So that really puts things into perspective. Secondly, I'm not sure how much of the calculations you made, Brazil, when the whole meta thing was done. But I did way back like a year and a half when I first approached this topic, and I was like really against the Zerker meta, and I contradicted a lot of people in their math calculation. Those calculations were for best case scenario, which means 100% DPS uptime. And even then, it's only for about 20 or 25 seconds or something like that until all the buffs fall down and you have to rebuff or stuff like that. What happens if you have to dodge? What happens if you go down? What happens in pack groups? It's not going to be always perfect, and on paper it can look perfect, and even then it's only for 25 seconds. So if you make a lot of calculations and you show people, okay, the maximum thing you can do is 13k. A lot of people, especially on the internet, with the attention span of like 5 seconds, 15 seconds, that's why you have Vine, they're going to look for numbers and the end goal. Like, okay, I use this and I do this much DPS, okay, I'm good. No one is going to bother to check. And that's where the delusion comes from. Because I was known for the Necromancer videos for a long time. And my guides were pinned to the official forums. And in my guides, I put average damage of around 7k. And when they look at the spokesperson for the warrior or for the mesmer or for the guardian, I don't know who you stand for. I know Nike plays warrior. Am I correct?
He usually does. He plays a
Okay,
couple of.
and when people look into comparison, Nike said 13k DPS and Nemesis said 6k DPS. Necromancer is useless. And between us two, between me and whoever said the 13k DPS, we created this more or less, because it basically proves that the Necromancer damage is half of the warrior, which is not the case. It may be half the bursting, and not even there. It depends. It's a lot of weird calculation. I can really boost up my bursting, but then it's again for 25 seconds. Now, if a fight takes longer than 25 seconds, that means the danger of that fight grows exponentially, because you can pretty much freeze the boss for like 25 seconds or stay behind the corner or put up like 5 blocks and 5 blinds, and you're safe for 25 seconds while you burst. If the fight is longer than 25 seconds, you're screwed, because people are going to get downed. That's exactly what's happening in Fractals. So now you have a lot of people with the mentality, I do 13k DPS no matter what, going in fights longer than 25 seconds in Fractals, with the idea that they do exactly 13k DPS no matter what, and all the other classes which were not advertised in the meta are useless. And then you get people that go like, you've seen the I don't know if you watched the video.
I've
like
watched
you
it.
do damage.
Your video that you made.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah. The one with the PV discussion.
Yeah, I've watched it
Yeah.
5 times.
A lot of people, and that was just some of the footage. People said in the comments, you cannot base this on a few bad runs. I had 40 dungeon runs and I couldn't figure out how I'm going to fast forward everything and put on 4 screens so people see just how bad it is. Majority of packs actually have the impression that they do what was advertised, 13k DPS. They have like 10% DPS uptime. I've watched hundreds of players like hit once, run around, hit again, run around, and they think they do 13,000, which is impossible. And in the comment section of that video, I got into an argument with a few people. And at one point, I came to an agreement with one of the people that was arguing with me. Even though the first thing he said, he called me retarded, but eventually we saw common ground. And I said, okay, show me 13k DPS. Show me a video of 13k DPS. And then he put a video where an elementalist reaches 13k DPS with Ice Bow. And he said, look, 13k DPS is not hard. And I immediately clicked because I wanted to see that. And I saw DPS going from 9k to 13k. It was actually 13k for like 10 or 15 seconds. And as soon as the Ice Bow spell finished, his DPS went down to 5k. And he remained to 5k until he got Ice Bow again. And then after he got Ice Bow, it went up to 7k. So the difference between what people think they do and what they actually do is already immense. It's unbelievable. And looking at the way the Elementalist played, he was really skilled. And he had 100% DPS uptime. Even with 100% DPS uptime after Ice Bow, his DPS went down to 5k. What happens when you have like 50% DPS uptime because you went down like 3 or 4 times and you're not hitting all the time because you're running all the time? People do like 3 or 4k DPS. They think they do 13k and kick everyone else because Nemesis said Necromancer only does 7k on average. Okay, why is this bad? Well, this is entertainment. Gaming is part of entertainment. And in order to have funding, you need to have a lot of people because people are going to get bored and they're going to quit and they're going to quit the game, and you rely on the new people, the newcomers. Newcomers are never going to come, the average player is never going to come with guilds. There isn't like everyone belongs to a really strong community. When you're just joining the game, you're going on LFG and you want to do a dungeon, normally. And when you're treated, and when as an average new player, you go into LFG, and all you see before you get kicked, fucking stupid necromancer, Zerker now learn to play, and you get kicked, that's not fun. And when you're not getting kicked, you see people running around from corner to corner to corner to corner. I had people, after I made that video, I got a lot of hate for it, and a lot of people actually whispered me in game to insult me. And at the same time, I got a lot of emails saying like, oh, thank God someone finally said it, and you are so right. And I got one player, he said, I just joined the game, and you are so right. I've been playing the game for 2 weeks, and I know all the positions, I know all the locations where to stack, and I have no idea how to get swiftness on my engineer. So it's detrimental from a lot of points of view. Not only is it detrimental for sustaining the game, that's what people that advertise all this speed clearing and all this stuff that don't get. If they continue on this path and we don't get a huge amount of incoming players, the game is going to lack funding and is going to crash. And then you won't be able to speed clear anymore because the game is going to die. It's not only detrimental from an economical point of view and it's going to ruin the game eventually worse than it already has, but it's also unrealistic. Every time I argue with someone, I always say, okay, man, fine, shut me up. Go into a pack group of your choice, into a fight of longer than 25 seconds, and show me in the damage meter that you do 13k DPS. Show me at the end that the damage meter registers 13k DPS. Show me that and I will make a public apology. No one ever showed me that because it's not actually possible. It's the illusion that that's the case. So people are kicking other people based on something that's not even real. So, yeah.
I mean, surely this could be solved with some nice, friendly communication. Say if you and the guys, the number crunchers from Death and Taxes, for example, say if you both agreed to say, well, this is the burst damage and this is the average damage, then it's not so much of a big deal anymore. As long as there's clarity in that sense, then this issue just is
exactly.
gone.
And the first time Brazil approached me, he said, you probably don't like me and stuff like that. And I said, I have nothing against you. And I said, in your ascension to top player, because Brazil is seen as a top player, as I understand, I don't think you were careful of how people interpret what you say. Because like I said, the first thing I said, if you're going to attach 13k DPS to a build, people are going to think, oh, we do 13k all the time. And it's a marketing technique. People, whenever the best example for this, whenever you get an offer for internet connection, they always say up to 100 megabytes. And then you buy it and you have like 1 megabyte and like, dude, what the hell? And we said up to 100, even though the average is around 5 most of the time. It's unrealistic and it's dumb. And people are falling for it. They're falling for internet contracts and they're falling for this in game. And it's bad for all the reason I mentioned.
Okay.
I do have some things to add on to that, if that's okay. Do you have any questions from chat or anything?
Not on this currently.
Okay.
All the questions are being collated for the questions and answers. I've got them all on the screen, so we're not losing any of them. So
okay,
please go ahead.
I'll go ahead then. Whenever we calculate numbers and stuff, there's a guy that frequents our forum. He's not a member of our guild. but he posted, this is just an example, he posted an engineer DPS rotation that involves like maximizing as much as possible and getting into stuff as ridiculous as like using dodge at a certain time to make a bomb or a little bit of extra damage. And when Dekeys was doing calculations, he thought, okay, let's just for fun see how much damage this can potentially do. And it's like 13,800 DPS. If, again, that's like optimized fully potential DPS. That's not a realistic rotation by any means, because you need your dodge for obviously dodging attacks, and you would have to be a Korean robot to ever even pull off the APMs required for that. And whenever I made my engineer DPS rotation demonstration video, it's the most repeatable rotation I could come up with. It's 27 seconds long, so it is difficult to learn and to pull off, and it does get interrupted. But when we calculate for stuff and we calculate DPS, we calculate for the most optimized scenario possible, like absolute vacuum rotations, 25 stacks of might, 25 vulnerability, food, dungeon potions, and like warrior banners and stuff like that. And that's the reason we calculate for that, is because you can get the, I guess, highest possible number, and you can scale that back to find what you would do under other circumstances. You want to get pure coefficients. You want to be able to optimize those for best case scenario. You can reverse optimize that for like worst case scenario. You can find an average with that, as long as you have your base coefficients and stuff like that. And when we go about and advertise stuff like that, we are, I guess the mindset of me and Nike and other people is that if you're going to be using these builds in like a ultimate speed clear world record runtime environment, then you will get close to, very, very close to, maybe possibly match the theoretical DPS. And if you are in a group, or if you're just playing for fun or whatever, just, I don't know, camping, this is another aspect I'll touch on in just, but in normal day-to-day play, you may not get close to that. You may not, you probably won't. And a lot of people, I guess, may think that warrior does this much damage, so if I auto-attack with greatsword and occasionally use 100 blades, I'll also do that much damage because someone says warrior does this much damage. And that creates a problem. That is, I don't know if they're necessarily at fault, the person who thinks that, or maybe we're necessarily at fault, but that is something that I try to be considerate of, and I try to explain whenever I talk about stuff. Like whenever somebody says, Brazil, how much damage does engineer do? And I say it has the potential to do about 12,500 DPS with the rotation that I use, and that puts it in about third place out of all the other classes. And they say, okay, and if I've expressed that that's, the potential it has, using a very difficult rotation, and they take away from that, engineer does 12,000 DPS, I'm gonna auto attack with grenade kit, then I don't know that there's too much else I could do, because I've tried to be as clear as possible. And in a lot of my build videos that I make, I don't focus too much on numbers. I try to explain how traits interact with each other. I try to explain, like, I'll go into a small detail about, like, sometimes optimizing armor stats, like if a couple pieces of assassin's armor is like 1% better, I'll mention that just so people don't, die when they're trying to make a set of ascended assassins pieces and a set of ascended berserkers pieces. Just make berserkers, or just make assassins, or whatever. I explain very small differences. And then, that being said, there are people like Nike and the Keys who like to go very in detail about math and, the potential DPS that you can pull off. comparing different warrior builds and different elementalist builds with each other, showing how much more potential DPS a staff is than, you know, whatever, or whatever the case may be. They like to focus a lot on that. I like to focus more on the kind of intuitive, this stuff makes sense. There's math behind it if you want to look for it. There are spreadsheets that show how much it can do if you care about that, but that's not what I'm concerned about. So, I don't know. I guess that is I think a lot of people from my guild and from the, I guess, speedrunning community in general, their approach is we'll consider the best possible situation, the fastest possible dungeon run, because that's the stuff we try to do and we try to replicate. And I don't think that approach is wrong. I think that approach is completely fine if you want to. But when a pug tries to say, hey, these guys say this, and I'm going to go do a run, and it's going to be bad, and no one's going to dodge anything, but the same numbers and the same stuff applies, I think that's kind of skewed. At the same time, if a pug wants to say, I want to just go in a dungeon, and I want to play not optimized builds, I want to make my own build because I don't want cookie cutter builds, whatever the case is, and I just want to go in and play with my friends, and we're not concerned with the fastest times, whatever. I think that approach is just fine. I don't have a problem with that. I guess a lot of the issue comes into play whenever people try to crisscross. People want to take, like, calling it the more casual approach sounds almost kind of bad. I don't like saying casual and hardcore, but just maybe for the sake of the, I don't know, I'll just go ahead and call it. If someone wants to take a more casual approach to dungeons, but if they think they're going to replicate super hardcore speed clear, hours and hours of resetting to get a record results, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, I think I think Nemesis, you and I actually kind of agree on this point a lot. And I think some of the people that I know that think they disagree with you, I think they might actually agree with you on this point too. I guess that's what I have to say.
Yeah, with what you said, that you focus on the maximum potential DPS in a vacuum, there's nothing wrong with that. The way you present it as a top player, I didn't see any of your works. I'm not sure if you did that. I'm just saying a lot of people told me you said these things, so I apologize if there is a problem. I know Nike. Again, I did not see it myself, but judging by the way he speaks in general, I'm inclined to think that the things I hear about him, about kicking and cursing based on math, it might be true as well. So the way you advertise that, if you don't specify like 4 or 5 times in a vacuum, people are, what is vacuum, doesn't matter. And they're going to go for the 13K. And that's where it all started from. A lot of people say my calculations are wrong. Well, that's not that bad considering my damage numbers. Every time I say average damage, it's a lot lower than what people are calculating, people that do the work you do. So best case scenario or worst case scenario, doesn't matter. It's still going to be higher than what I advertise. So think of it this way. If you take my builds, you're always going to do more DPS than I advertise. So nothing wrong there. The way I calculate damage, I don't calculate in a vacuum because I realized long ago, based on the feedback I got on my first build video, I actually listened to the feedback of people, and there was a time for like 6 or almost a year when I answered every single comment because I had only like 5,000 or 6,000 subscribers and I could manage that. Now I cannot because it's too many and I'm busy with other stuff. But I know the feedback and I know what people understand from what I say. And a lot of people don't know how much work there is behind this because based on a 2-year experience of teaching people builds, I know how to formulate in such a way that I am understood exactly what I say is understood the way I wanted to say. So when I started advertising damage numbers, what I do, I get a lot of footage for the build to showcase as an example. And I watch, I remember the sequences in which I had a hard time playing that particular bit. And it's like this. If I have a hard time playing at this spot, the majority, not necessarily the majority, there's going to be a high percentage of people that are going to die at this spot. So the damage that I'm doing here is in the upper limit. Then I'm going to take the damage that I do when I have a really easy time. And this is not math. This is actual damage recorded on screen. And I actually spend the time with a calculator, the little thing where you add numbers. I put the timer on everything. I manually add all the damage and I divide by the time. So I couldn't be more accurate because I'm calculating the real DPS. And I take an average from that and I put it on screen. And I assume that people are going to be more or less in that average. And if I say you are going to do 8K, if you do this, the majority of people that use my build will be able to do 8K because they will be able to do what I say. In all circumstances, they don't have to rely on blinking through the map or perma-blind or perfect team, because that's the point. I'm making builds, I'm making guides for the average player. The average players are going to be always the majority and the people that require builds. I'm not making builds for pros. Why would they even be looking at guides? Pros don't need guides. But the average player, the majority, don't have access to all these resources. They buy a game, they go in LFG, and they expect to perform. Now, the average player recently looks up to people like you guys. And like I said, if you don't specify like 1,000 times, people are not going to get it. And they try to mimic what they see, and they fail, and they end up doing nothing. And then they blame everyone else, which creates a really toxic environment for newcomers, which lowers the potential of the game even further. And people who dedicated all their free time into making a YouTube channel out of this, like a living, the game, as the game falls, it drags you with it. And you're forced to leave it behind and go into something more popular. And there's entire philosophy behind this. So it's bad for the consumer, it's bad for the developer, and it's bad for people who advertise it. And it's all because of a misunderstanding in communication, how you explain things. And that gets further amplified when people go, fuck you, knob, we do 13k DPS. Yeah, maybe for 25 seconds you do if you have a perfect party with people that you play for like 5 years. The pugs are never going to get that.
But I mean, if you also incorporated that and you were very clear, so if you did your guide and you had what you do now, so you have whatever DPS you do on average, not in a vacuum, it's just everything's going on normally, and then if you also had the maximum theoretical DPS, that means people would have a frame of reference to compare your guides to other people's guides, but also you have your section of down to earth realistic stuff. I mean, surely that would kind of solve this problem, because the only reason this problem exists in my eyes is because we have two different methods going along and people are trying to compare them and it doesn't work.
You don't hear any sound.
Oh, mic muted.
Did you mute your mic? Did he... Sound is gone. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
He's gone from Skype.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, well, it says there's a problem with this call. Hold on while we try to connect.
Huh. Okay.
Well, this is gonna get edited out in my video.
Yeah. This is the best part. You've got to leave this in.
Yeah.
Huh. Is he online? Is he still online on Skype?
Hold on. Wonder if it's on. Can't possibly be on my end because. I'm gonna stop my recording. Then, because I'm gonna have to open stuff and I don't want. I don't want people's real names to get shown.
Oh no, I think I may have. No, actually, no, I'm good. I haven't done that.
It's calling him back. Oh,
Oh,
is
here he is.
you back?
Oh,
Yeah, my internet is perfectly fine.
Interesting.
Skype. That was quite unusual.
Yeah, I immediately did a ping check on Google. Works perfectly fine.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I forgot what what I was saying. Anyway, it's like that.
He just asked you about putting the theoretical max DPS and also
Yeah,
average.
I was yeah. I was saying if I had more time to do those calculations as well, then I would.
Okay.
But um, it's like showing those calculations is vacuum is showing the DPS you are never going to go over. And in my opinion, at least, it's not that important to have the cap to show where the cap is, because and especially in most of the time I make builds for fractals. The builds I make is for the most difficult content possible. And in fractals, on average, you're not going to have 100% DPS uptime. I don't have 100% DPS uptime. It's impossible. And I've seen people solo fractals 50, the Mossman, soloing fractals 50 Mossman, and he doesn't have 100% DPS uptime. I mean, of course, when he's solo, but even when he plays non-solo, because I watch a lot of those that guy's video because I think he's a really good player. I forgot his name to give a shout out. Even though he contradicts with me and he said a lot of mean things about me, doesn't matter. He's a good player. He doesn't have 100% DPS uptime, not even in a pug scenario. I mean, in a group scenario, he doesn't have that. So I guess it's okay to calculate the cap, but if 90 or even 70% of the time, if you don't hit that cap, then I don't see a point from my point of view.
Well, I mean, the point from my perspective is that you could avoid having your numbers being directly compared to death and taxes numbers, for example, because if you don't have the same criteria for what you're calculating, you're going to have a comparison, and then everyone's going to say, well, your numbers are wrong, obviously, because they are using a different environment to calculate their numbers. So it's not as if it doesn't, you don't even have to see the point of it. The fact is that there are people who are going to want to calculate the maximum possible DPS because that's what they do, that's what they like to do. So, and if you accommodate for that, then suddenly your numbers won't be taken out of context when compared to theirs as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, the whole Berserker meta and the fact that the AI is so bad and so many dungeons can be exploited, everything that cannot be... There was a time when you could exploit Ara, like go through the steps in the beginning. I'm sure you guys know about it.
Yeah.
Well, everyone was doing just that because everything that cannot be done that way is less than optimal, because the point is of a game to grind an immense amount of time to get 1 million tokens and then something, I don't know, buy millions of skins, I don't know. Everything that cannot be done during that time, at least, everything that could not be done by going through those steps was automatically not worth doing. So it's how should I say this? It matters your DPS uptime from you have to be alive to do DPS. And of course you're going to be alive if you just got to the boss through the steps, you actually went through the map. And there was in TA that one time when you climbed on top of the map and you got to the end boss and people climbed on those leaf things and they were hitting the boss without the boss hitting back. Then of course you're going to have 100% DPS uptime, and it's a totally different scenario, and vacuum calculations matter because you can get what you calculate. You could get theoretically, as long as it's for 25 seconds, because buffs don't last longer than 25 seconds without a rebuff. They don't. Without a rebuff, they don't. And you cannot buff on the fly when you're using weird mechanics to stack in weird places to hit without being hit, as far as I remember. Because I went through all the buff times from all the buffs, and it's actually impossible to stay perma-buffed indefinitely without stopping to buff. So rebuffing, dodging, and all those times, all those things take away DPS uptime. So, like I said, average, the average matters, especially in content which is worth doing. Because of course vacuum calculations matter when, for the Spider Queen, for example, then your vacuum calculations matter a lot, because we all saw that the Spider Queen dies in like 10 seconds. Then I have absolutely nothing against that. Your calculations are very valid there. The problem is people are under the weird impression that if they do that there, they can do it in fractals. And then they go like, hello, I'm here. And then they go splat. And then they curse at everyone and vote kick. That's what's happening.
Okay. Do you have any final words on that, Brazil?
I just want to mention that on our forums, at least we have access to math and calculations for some classes currently. And there is a DPS calculator spreadsheet that Dekeys made available and that someone else has also implemented into a website. So if people are interested in vacuum numbers, stuff like that, that is all accessible, at least for the most part. And we try to keep up to date on that, but the process and the stuff that goes into that is very, very time consuming. It's mostly just Dekeys that does it. And things constantly get updated in the game, so, you know, she's made like month of progress and then a coefficient changes or a trait gets removed or whatever, have to start over or redo. So if people like seeing maximum possible DPS, that is available. Forums can, you know, DM me, or I can redirect you, DM Nike or Dekey, whoever, and we can help you out with that. If you're interested in average and stuff, you can kind of reverse engineer some of the numbers we get, or you can just go into a game using our builds and record for a period of time, so you can find an average for a situation that way. Just for the sake of like comparison, like if you Nemesis, if you don't ever want to worry about calculating highest DPS because it's not something you're interested in, if you want to use any of our calculations that we've got or any of our numbers, you can always feel free to do that. And I mean, I don't know if you ever would, but you can if you just want to mention like, this is my average DPS. This is a very real number that I'm advertising to you because I feel that it's attainable. However, if you're interested in, you know, the biggest number, there's someone over here, Dekeys, who is a nice, lovely lady who has done math, and you can check her stuff out if that's something you can. If you want to do any, like, you don't have to, but I'm just saying that's an option.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And the only thing I want to say, this whole thing started because of a lack of damage meter.
Yeah.
The developers said that we don't want elitism and we're not going to advertise a damage. We're not going to implement a damage meter.
The irony.
Yeah. It escalated way out of proportion, and you have, like you said, a very nice lady which does the calculation. It's very time consuming. I know how time consuming it is. That's why I'm not doing realistic numbers and theoretical numbers, because it's extremely time consuming. And instead of a damage meter, we have people like you guys doing all that theoretical work and people like me doing all that realistic work. I don't know a better word for it. And because of these two sides, you have countless people kicking each other and arguing in the LFG, and it's a toxic environment, all because of a lack of a damage meter. The damage meter is the only real way to actually calculate damage for that particular encounter at that specific point in time. Because maybe you have a cold and you don't play that well that particular moment, and you get to see your damage at the end of the fight. All of this could have been avoided with a damage meter. And if we ever get a damage meter, it's going to crush so many people's dreams, especially the elite wannabes. It's like, I thought I do 13k DPS. Man, I suck. And it's going to eliminate a lot of the class hate, because the average, I didn't see many of your videos. I saw 3 or 4 of them. The one when you said about Necromancer, you did a video on the Necromancer saying that the average damage of the Necro is probably even higher than the Warrior because he's more sustainable. I remember you saying that. Well, yeah, could be. The average is around plus minus 1k, always. And I think even in your top upper limit theoretical calculations, I think the average is already plus minus 1k. And I think they are leaving it there. I'm not sure. Is that true?
I'm max DPS on Necromancer is something I'm not terribly sure of yet. It's something, but
When I did my first anti-Zerker meta video a year and a half, someone, I got a link from one of my subscribers with a forum. I don't know if it's yours or not. I forgot. And I saw a nice timetable. What do you call that when you put numbers in a
spreadsheet.
Yeah, spreadsheet. And everything was like 13k 700 something, 13k 400 something, leech form 13k 900 something. And all those numbers were higher than mine, all of them. I'm like, okay. But between the Necro and the Warrior, I think it's around plus minus 1k, the upper limit. And I think that 1k, plus minus 1k, is there because the combat system was supposed to be a lot more dynamic than in the traditional Holy Trinity Holy Trinity system. And you need to have that 1k error, like to compensate for the, you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure,
I just don't
yeah.
write the words now. Yeah, so it's the measure for error when you like DPS, when you go in melee versus range and stuff like that. It's really hard to calculate, and I think they left a 1k difference just in case. But still, 1k for 1k difference on the potential DPS you will almost never achieve in a pug from one single player in a group. That's like already 25% effectiveness comes from one player, and you lose 1k out of 13k maximum. That's again from 25% effectiveness. If you get the calculations for that as well, is under 10% effectiveness loss, and a lot under 10% effectiveness loss. If you don't get another play in the next 40 seconds, you're already slower. And people are meta this, meta that, only this class, only that class. If you don't get an extra player in the next 40 seconds, you are slower by default. Nothing you can do about it. And people just don't get that. People just look at numbers like, aha, I'm pro. No, you're not.
All right.
And it's not like I discredit you guys. I refer to you like I have, you see how whenever we talk and I reply, I have respect for you because you are like respectful. So I offer what I get. It's I don't think you personally ever did that by the way you speak, by the way you handle yourself. I don't think you ever went into a group and say, fuck you now, learn to play, and you linked your site, your website. But people who actually do that were the ones who started this whole mess in the first place. And I made like 2 or 3 videos on the topic. It's not what I'm concerned about, but I'm one of the people, one of the spokespersons for Guild Wars 2, one of the people who still make videos for Guild Wars 2. And my words have a little weight to them. So I'm not going to stay idle while this unrealistic bullshit is in the air. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we have exhausted that in a very fine and in-depth way. Now that was some intense discussion. Now that was absolutely excellent. I think we've talked about speed running a good amount. So I think unless anyone else has to say anything about that, I think we'll. Do you want to talk about the tricks of the trade, skipping things and breaking out of the map and or exploits of that sort? Is this hurting the game? I think that's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but Nemesis, would you like to comment on that?
I already said I went into this. It's all about the average player, like I said. A game that doesn't have an expansion in 2 years, doesn't bring new dungeons in 2 years. I mean, we got some new dungeons, but nah. No new class, no new story, no new end boss, no new. How it used to work. The companies used to bring an expansion every year or every 2 years, most developers, because that's around the time when people get bored and they start leaving. And a game that doesn't bring that in 2 years, and instead of that, we got the living story, which started really badly. No matter who you were, even if you're a casual, the living story started badly. So, without that, there's already not much to keep a lot of casual players in except grind. And there are games out there which were designed especially for grind and do grind a lot better than this game. And they have a bigger advertisement budget and they can advertise themselves better. And at any rate, a game that was designed from the start to be a hack and slash grind fest, it's going to do much better than a game which was not advertised that way, was not thought that way, has a build system which was not designed for such a thing. That's why you have 27 build stats combinations. It just doesn't work. And like I said, if a new player joins the game, buys the game, and goes in LFG and goes in fractals, he's not going to have a fun time. If he's lucky to play the class which is considered meta, fine. But all the other classes, you're not going to have a fun time, and then you're going to leave. Especially if you don't have a monthly subscription, you're like, well, this was a waste of time, I'm going to leave. They're not going to stay for the end of the month, because a lot of people buy the game. I'm like, I bought it, now I have a month, might as well use that month. There were a lot of people that bought the game. I know people that bought the game and were like, this is bullshit, and left after 6 days and even demanded the refund. But to be fair, I said this at the end of my video. If the Zerker meta was not invented to give people like something to work towards, like be competitive from a speed cleaning point of view, maybe the game would have been even worse. I'm not sure. As it is, it's toxic in my opinion, but it's still alive. Without speed clearing, it might have just died. So that's something that I have to acknowledge and admit. So it's fine, but it cannot stay like this forever. It's already going really bad. The expansion announcement video and part of YouTube and stuff like that, I'm not sure how much you watch demographics and statistics, and I'm not sure how well you're attuned with all this advertising stuff. I'm recently getting into this a lot. And if the expansion announcement video has 400,000 interested viewers, you're fucked. As a company, you're going down. And it's really bad. So I hope things will get better.
So if I understand you correctly, you don't really mind the skipping mobs and mechanics such as that is
I actually wanted to speak about this. In the living story, I was gone 8 months and I did the living story later than everyone else. There was this one part where you were like playing a very interesting custom thief, and you had an achievement where you could actually skip. That's what I want to see. For all the people that want to grind, we have the old dungeons. For all the people who love skipping, make it official. Don't make this weird stuff that if you, like, at one point, if you're too slow or if your swiftness ends at the wrong time, you're just dead because the mob catch up to you. Make skipping official. Give mechanics that reward skipping playstyle, stealthy skipping playstyle. I want to see that. It's something that was never attempted in an MMO before, like Splinter Cell style. You know what I'm saying? Like the infiltration playstyle. That would be something really, really fun. As long as it's not imbalancing the game. Skipping is imbalancing the game because it makes a lot of different play styles obsolete, and even classes. They make classes obsolete, which is just dumb, in my opinion. I don't know.
Okay, Brazil, do you share a similar sentiment on that sort of thing?
I have a lot to say on this. If I don't know if you guys are both looking at the Word document or topics, but this is going to bleed into topics maybe all the way into 2, 3, and 4 a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it out of those as much as I can. But
I mean, I was just kind of seeing
Okay.
as they're kind of the same thing. I was going to bring all of the techniques used to speed things up and semi-exploit the mechanics of the game.
Okay. Well, we will get into this. So, speedrunning, First, I want to start off by talking about other video games. Before I ever played Guild Wars 2 or ever played MMOs or anything, I was really into watching like Pokemon Game Boy Color speedruns and like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time speedruns and watching like Cosmo Wright and even like F-Zero GX. F-Zero GX is one of my favorite games to watch people speedrun because it is absolutely fucking crazy to see the ways that they can break the game engine and like go over the edge of the map for like a frame to get a speed boost. Crazy shit like that. I love stuff like that. And there's a part of me deep down inside. I like going out of maps. I like breaking things. I like finding, what can be exploited. I think that is all really awesome and really fun. But those games are games that were released on a disc or a cartridge and never got updates, never got patches. They're mostly, I guess, single player games, and they don't constantly get new stuff. They don't have, communities of, well, I don't know. They're one type of game. They're not an MMO. And there are, for world record runs and stuff, for Pokemon games, there is like any percent where you can, as long as you complete the Elite Four, be the champion, or I guess it's as long as you get the cutscene at the end, that's when the record stops. And then there's any percent glitchless, where as long as you get to, last cutscene, and you don't use any glitches, there are different categories for that. People who, like exploiting, and people who like doing it fast but not exploits, people that don't like breaking out of the map. There are categories for that. And at the beginning of doing records in Guild Wars 2, whenever I first joined D&T, getting into records and stuff, there was no set of restricted and unrestricted rules. Everything was just one big pool. So you would have people that would do a record run in a dungeon, and then someone else would come along and would do a record run for the same dungeon. They would go through a wall, or they would jump over a door, or they would go into the map. And having all of that stuff in the same category created a big problem because there were people who, at the time, I wanted to find like game-breaking mechanics to use to do things faster. I thought it was fun. But there were people who didn't want to do that, who just wanted to play through what they would consider how ANET intended it to. And over time, I thought about it a lot, and I thought about how, this is an MMO. There are lots of people playing it, and while there is this part of me that likes to break things, it's an MMO, so it's going to get content updates. Stuff is going to be rendered obsolete. Exploits are going to get fixed. Holes are going to be patched up. You're going to put an invisible wall in the way. And not everyone else likes to do this. So I I guess, started to become an adopter of the restricted rule set where you don't have any like hard exploits like going through the map or just skipping straight to the end. Skipping necessary bosses that are supposed to be necessary. Like Lupicus in a Raw. As far as I know, you can still do a Raw Path 2 and never kill Lupicus. There are ways to do that. But in Path, 3 or 4, do that. So that's why in Guild Wars 2, I am very much opposed to exploiting through the map or using terrain, stuff like that. I'm very much in opposition of that currently. I probably will remain that way. That, I guess, depending on how you view corner stacking, that may turn into more gray area, but I'll touch on that in just a moment. But I think, personally for me, in games like Ocarina of Time, where you're playing it for an experience, or if you're streaming it as a speedrun for other people to watch, you want to break the game, you want to defeat Goma and use your bug jar and teleport right to fighting Ganon with a Deku stick. I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. I absolutely love that. But that's not something where you're affecting other players directly, causing a cataclysm in an active community that's constantly expanding and whatever, if that makes any sense. So I think that kind of plays into skipping mobs. If the mobs are not directly required for the completion of the dungeon, I'll use Lieutenant Kohler in Ascalonian Catacombs. He's not required for the dungeon completion. So I don't really care. Like, if you're doing a record run or whatever, or just a pug run, I don't care if people skip that. If getting another Skype. I'm getting lots of other Skype messages. Please stop. Whoever's fucking doing that. Someone's sending me stuff about Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I don't have time for that now. I don't have a problem with people skipping things that are unnecessary for the completion of the dungeon. I think that's fine. Jesus fuck. But if you are doing a record run, and if you're doing like a pug run, and you tell people they have to exploit through the map because that's the fastest way to do things, or you tell people we have to go under the map because this boss is too hard, or we have to, skip Lupicus because we're pugs and we'll never be able to do it. I don't like that. I don't know. I would prefer people just learn the encounter, learn mechanics, do it. Another example, I did a COE run last night, all 3 paths of COE, with a very good friend of mine and with some people from her guild. And a lot of people's default reaction was to pull everything into a corner, pull Subject Alpha into a corner, pull the wolves into a corner, pull the mobs into a corner, and then, the camera angles start to can't see anything, and I feel like that is really ingrained into people still from when Fiery Greatsword was, like, when you could really abuse the shit out of Fiery Greatsword. People still, I guess they just think we have to go into a corner because we have to do this. Problem with that is that if you're going to pull 20 mobs and group them up, put them all on top of you, have to be able to defend against that. You have to put down a wall of reflection. You have to blind them. You have to play very actively, even though that's something you're doing. If you just go into a corner with 20 mobs and you just auto attack, or you just try and DPS them, you're gonna die. You're gonna just eat shit really fast. So there's even still, like, there are mechanics to corner stacking that, make it what it is. And a lot of people just don't think about that. A lot of people just assume that you're supposed to go into a corner. And fighting Subject Alpha, like, I was playing a thief for, like, the Path 3 run, and people wanted to put Alpha in the corner. I'm thinking, I can't backstab. And there's no reason to go into a corner anyways, because these people don't know how to line cast Ice Bow 4. There's no Fiery Greatsword anymore. There's no warriors to whirlwind into the wall. and like I'm not going to be able to backstab as well if you're in a corner. So it's strange. There are, I think, mechanics to corner stacking that make it, in a degree, in some situations, make it a skill-based situation. But I think the default reaction of pulling everything into the corner just automatically to fight it, I don't think that makes any sense. I think it's kind of stupid. And I don't know, skipping mobs and stuff. There was a dev post a very long time ago. I think it was specifically about risen giants in Ara. I think it may have been Path 3 or Path 4. I don't remember which one. They said, these mobs are here and they're not meant to be killed. That was the goal of them, because they're these huge things that are difficult, very hard to kill, and we want you to go past them. The intention is not for you to kill them. I still don't recall if those are the legendary giants that spawn at the secret event at the end of Path 4. I don't know if they're talking about the 3 giants that walk around the altar at the end of Path 3, or if they're talking about the champion giant that patrols in Path 3 and Path 4 by all those other mobs and the risen hands that, But mobs like that, mobs, just general trash mobs that don't have any effect on completing the dungeon, I don't have a problem if people really skip those. I think that's fine. If you want to kill them, I mean, feel free to do that. If you want to try and get a precursor off of them, or go ahead. But I don't know. At the risk of getting too rambly, I'll go ahead and pass this on to Nemesis if he has anything to add to it.
Yeah, I do actually. Call me old-fashioned, but besides the obvious point that I made earlier about if you can do a dungeon in 3 minutes, so can everyone else, and you're not making profit. I don't know how many more times I have to say this. People keep saying that Berserker meta needs to stay, I need to make more profit. You're not making more profit. I remember in the beginning, I'm one of the most stupid stuff I did in MMOs. I was one of the first people to get tailoring up, and I had 35 gold when the first precursor was 7 gold. And I'm like, I'm not going to buy them now. I'm going to wait until they're going to be 5 gold, and I'm going to buy more of them. That was a mistake. So now a legendary is 3,000 gold. And in order to compensate, they created even more grind fests, events, and stuff like that. You're not making more profit. The point of an MMO, the point of any sort of entertainment, the point of in sports, like in MMA and stuff like that, they have very strict rules and no doping, no stuff like that, because the harder the challenge, the more satisfying the victory, or I don't know the saying. What's the point of running past a lot of crap to get to the end and free something and that gets up tokens, especially if everyone can do it and your tokens are they don't have the same value. Gaming is supposed to be about fighting, not running. Just if all the parts when you run, just cut them out. just get to the point, so we don't have to keep running and running. If you like to run, make some races. We have races in Guild Wars too, for people who actually just like to run all the time. And according to what you said about having mobs that you were supposed to skip, I totally agree to that. But like I said in the beginning, make it official, facilitate that. Instead of really hard to beat monsters, make them invincible. Make them invincible so everyone knows you have to skip this. And make it even harder to skip. Not just some weird kind of hard mobs that don't chase you much. Make it like, I have the perfect idea. Prince of Persia Warrior Within, when you're getting chased by the Haka. Make it like that. So skipping actually has value and requires skill. I'm totally fine with that. Maybe get some... they revamped the event in... what you call it? Dredge Fractal? Where you have to place the bombs with stealth and stuff like that. That was awesome. That actually made sense. And to be honest, before it was really weird. I mean, in the groups with the people that I used to play that have now quit, we were killing everything. And we had this really strong group that managed to kill things. And then I saw that other people, pugs, were just kamikazing mobs, bombs to the door. I'm like, well, this is weird, but I guess it's as effective, especially that not everyone has the type of group that can actually kill all those mobs. We were killing all of them. And in the beginning, in COF, in the room where you have to protect that annoying little Asura NPC, in the beginning, the mobs were really hard to beat, and a lot of people were just running crazy. Me and my group, we were killing everything, like really hardcore killing. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I saw people in pugs just running all the way in the room, like, what the hell is this? So yeah, you can have this, and I'm actually for this, as long as it doesn't imbalance the game to the point where it's so effective that you have to do this, and it works only in some dungeons so that everyone is doing just that because it's the most profitable, which again, it's not because everyone is doing that. And what it does, it created a game where you have to play 4 classes and do 2 dungeons because that's where the profit is. That's stupid. If everyone, if that's what it is, we can all get together and make a few videos and advertise Guild Wars 2 as the game with 2 dungeons, 3 classes, and see how far it goes. Because, yeah, as a person who has a channel dedicated to Guild Wars 2, I'm indexed by YouTube. And every time people search Guild Wars 2 and put a lot of, like, Guild Wars 2 Necromancer, I show up. And if the guy that shows up with Necromancer videos says, don't play Necromancer, just play these 3 classes and do these 2 dungeons, it looks horrible. It's not attractive. I wouldn't play that. I'm like, what the hell is this?
I think I have to say I think that is a little bit of hyperbole there. I mean, Brazil's video, is Necromancer worth playing? I think demonstrates quite nicely that Necromancer is indeed worth playing, and it only really matters in these optimized situations. So again, I mean, you say it's all about the average player. The average player, it's not really going to matter if you're doing 1k less DPS than in his optimal anyway. So even though that in the best thing maybe it's have mass ice bows and stack on top of each other and I don't know, jump around in a circle or something, it doesn't really matter. For the average player isn't going to be interested in doing that much. So I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration there, just a little bit.
I'd like to add in some more stuff. I don't know how unique my situation is compared to necessarily other people in my guild. I like speedrunning. I like record runs sometimes. Sometimes I get tired of that. I like doing things as quickly as possible. A lot. I enjoy that. I also, however, enjoy from time to time just fucking around and doing whatever, like just going through a dungeon, playing retarded stuff, fighting every single enemy. Sometimes that's fun for me. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for other people, but I enjoy things from different ends of the spectrum. So I don't know if that necessarily gives me more insight to stuff, but like, where was I even fucking going with this? I don't think I really remember.
Sometime as well.
But I don't know. I guess, okay. So you made a comment just a few moments ago about gaming being about fighting and not about running, I think is what you said. And to an extent, I think I might agree with that, but I think playing games should be about fun, unless you are like a professional esports player or whatever and you do it for a living. Then it's about entertainment and other stuff. It gets different then. But I think playing a game is a hobby. I think it should be about fun. And I guess the point I was trying to make is sometimes I have fun speed clearing, skipping everything, killing everything as fast as possible, just getting to the end of it. Sometimes that's what I enjoy. Not all the time. I get bored of dungeons in Guild Wars 2 incredibly quickly. I'll, farm dungeons really effectively, really quickly for like a week, and then I will get tired of it and I'll just want to stand in Lion's Arch and talk to people. Or play with friends who take things slower sometimes. And I kind of fluctuate with what I enjoy. And I think if someone has fun, taking it slow, killing every single mob, uh, not skipping things, I think as long as that gives to them having fun and enjoying the game, I think that's a good thing. I think that is probably a positive experience for them. So I don't. If someone's having fun, I think that's my vision of what playing games is about. It's about having fun. Taking away from someone else's fun by kicking them out of the group because they aren't a berserker, they're not using speed clear builds. I don't think that is the correct thing to do. But at the same time, if, I don't know, you want to speed clear, you can post and make your own group, and if someone doesn't, read the LFG and they just join playing like a full Sentinels gear Guardian with like all signets, you can explain to them, hey, we're looking to do a speed clear run, and I don't know that you're necessarily suited for that, and if there's a mutual understanding, then they both go on their own way, whatever, no feelings hurt. But after, I don't know, it gets into another point almost where doing the same thing over and over, you eventually kind of start to get tired of it, and then you want to just, if you want to keep doing it for the reward or whatever, you just want to get it over with. And also, this plays into, like, after the 20th time of someone joining the LFG, you posted about, meta builds, whatever, and someone joins on a Sentinel's Guardian and not really expecting a speedrun, you get kind of tired of explaining to them about how we're not suited to what you're trying to do, and you may not be suited to what people get more prone to, kick and not give an explanation, whatever. And I don't think that's a good thing, and I feel like maybe my message and that kind of maybe lost in translate. I don't know, but yeah, if you have anything to add to that, then feel free.
Yeah, definitely. I just exactly what I mean. That's why it takes so long in developing everything ever since I went to scripted videos. It takes a really long time to formulate in such a way so it's absolutely understood the way you want it to be. I said gaming should be about fighting, not about running, and you understood me what I said, but not what I meant. Fighting games should be about fighting. This is not Minecraft or I don't know what, Second Life or whatever. Fighting games should be about fighting. And you said contrary, like a counter argument that games should be about fun. It's not actually a counter argument. That's exactly my point. I agree 100%. Gaming should be about fun, and fighting games should be about about fighting. I also agree that skipping, like I previously said, should be a thing in certain locations, as long as it doesn't imbalance the game to a point where that's all you do and you have 3 classes and 2 dungeons and good times. Gaming should be about fun. Imbalance is not fun. Getting kicked is not fun. And a lot of the things that the Zerker meta, not necessarily the Zerker meta, the causes of the Zerker meta, because the problem, the bad AI and all the things that facilitate the Zerker meta have other things that are a side effect to that. And all of those things are not fun. Grinding stuff is not fun, and the Zerker meta can only substitute for so long. Even you get bored now. You did all those speedruns, you did all the running, you did all the stuff, but it's still boring. It won't replace proper content forever. You can't just expect people to run 1300. I know someone who did COF Path 1 30,000 times. He quit now, but he still did 30,000 times. It's not going to substitute forever. It should be about, like you said, about fun. And it should also appeal to a lot of different categories of people. That's why I believe, that's why I previously said, we are agreeing on this. We just formulate differently. That's why I said dungeons, at this point, it's too late to change the dungeons. People are going to rage. So leave them for people who want to do something really fast. A lot of people who don't have the time to play like 7 or 8 hours a day, but they still want to be rewarded. And the hardcore MMOs who have proper raiding, they don't offer this. Even the small dungeons take up to an hour if you're like really casual. And people sometimes don't have that. They have half an hour. So leave these dungeons as they are, maybe change them in some way. So skipping and fast clearing and stuff like that is not done so weirdly with weird camera corner stacking crap and freezing the boss and stuff. Lower their HP so you don't have to freeze them. Make it official. Make these dungeons for speed clearing. So everyone who doesn't have time to play, maybe lower the reward or give a higher reward on something more hardcore. But you can leave the dungeons as they are for the people who still want to do something content-wise but don't have the time. I'm fine with that. As long as we have something for people who enjoy diversity, who enjoy hardcore content, who enjoy doing something really difficult and getting a massive reward at the end and stuff like that. It's totally fine. But they should also advertise the dungeons. They should call them mini dungeons, made especially for power type. I don't know. They can formulate it. I don't know the wording now. But it could work. It could work and it would fix a lot of things, especially if they also implement a damage meter. And yeah, like I said, you enjoy running in some games. You enjoy speedruns. Maybe I don't. Maybe I have a different preference. There's no reason why the game cannot accommodate all of us. And as a marketing strategy, it's wise to do it, especially now that the people who still remain and play the game actually enjoy grinding. There's room for all of us, as long as they it's not a substitute for proper gaming. Like, there you go, just buy our 100,000 skins and grind some more. That's not going to work. Doesn't matter what our personal opinion about this, realistically, it's not going to work. And it shows in the interest of not our YouTube channels, but the official channel. And they had, when they announced Heart of Thorns, they had like 7,000 viewers on stream. And Diablo 3 had 150,000 on stream and it wasn't even official. That's putting things into perspective. And that directly translates into funding to further improve the game in the future. So, yeah.
All right. Brazil, would you like to finish up here on this topic, or has everything been said?
I think I've really said everything on that I think I want to say. So.
Okay. Where should we go now? We're going to talk about viability and diversity and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we could talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to skip ahead if there's anything I've missed.
Well, we could potentially do a specific discussion on like belittling other players in Elite. Touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't. Is that something you want to like talk about, Nemesis, or think?
Like I said, it's delusional elitism. People. Yeah, I want to say something regarding that. I mentioned before that I respect you as a player, not necessarily as a player because I didn't see you play, but as an individual, like a really down-to-earth, logical stuff like that. With that being said, I saw another one of your videos that had my name in it. That's why I was curious. I was actually looking to see if you announced this podcast because I forgot to announce it. I'm like, maybe he did it. And then I saw my name and I watched the video. You did a few dungeons and you said it's like not as bad as it used to be and you don't see a lot of people kicking and you were surprised to see that people were doing They were freezing the boss, and they were stacking. It's pretty okay. Yeah. Um, in my opinion, how should I say this so it doesn't come out wrong? You didn't do an analysis in depth enough on the situation. You went in a few dungeon runs, and it wasn't that bad, and it was okay. If you are going to play a necromancer and try fractals, try it for a week. Try playing necromancer fractal for a week, and then you will get the understanding of what an average player who plays the wrong class gets into. See how you're getting kicked over and over and over. As soon as you say, guys, let's not go in the water in the mouse, let's not do mossman in the water, you get instantly kicked like 20 times. Because I was getting some fractal relics for my new hybrid build to get the agony resist stuff. So I did fractals again. And I'm like, guys, let's just... Cause they were failing to bring the mossman in the thing. I'm like, guys, let's just do it this way. It's easy. I got kicked. At least 15 times in 15 different... I'm like, fucking hell. That's the experience of the... Unless I'm the most unluckiest person in the world, which I don't personally believe in destiny, then that's that's the average. And when you advertise something, it's not that bad, it's not exactly the case. It wasn't exactly the case. To say that people are not, they kind of know how things are. They're not that elitist. They are very elitist and very aggressive, and they whisper you and.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, he's gone. Has he gone again?
I think
Oh.
we can't. I think.
Oh. Ooh. What is going on here?
I don't know.
Look, that's a thumbnail right there.
Well-
That is what I'm talking about.
Oh man, that was not a good time for Skype to
No.
fuck around. That was. Damn it.
2 times? Really? Okay, right. I am going to take this opportunity to go and fill my drink up again.
Everyone spread rumors. Nike's DDoSing Nemesis.
Hang on, guys. I'll be right back.
Well, I guess I'll entertain the stream for now. So hopefully you guys are enjoying. And I have no fucking clue if I'm even audible, if I'm the only person, But we'll go with the assumption that I am. So if you guys are enjoying, feel free to follow Mightyteapot on Twitch. He also makes YouTube videos. You can find him just by searching Mightyteapot on YouTube. Nemesis appears to be back now. That was very...
Again, my internet works perfectly fine.
Yeah, we're still in the Skype call. We haven't, we didn't lose the Skype, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But do you want to continue with that, or I have some stuff I could say in reply?
No, it's fine. I lost my momentum, so
Okay.
you can go ahead.
I'll go ahead and I'll reply to that a little bit. I think that you saying I didn't analyze it enough. I think that's a good response. I think that's probably fair. I don't ever hug fractals. I have a very, very, very long story about fractals and
You should try.
Yeah, why I just don't like them in general. I do them with guildies sometimes. I do guild runs of 50s and whatever, and I really don't even enjoy them there in an environment where I know things will more or less go well. But pugging fractals, I guess I'm in a situation where I don't have to do it if I ever want to do fractals, but there are other people who are not in my situation who they may only ever get to do fractals and pugs, and they may only like playing a necromancer. Yeah, I didn't account for them. I was only really, speaking for dungeons, I guess, general dungeons, and that particular dungeon was just AC and, just do that all the time. So I think that's a fair point. Yeah, pugging fractals on a necromancer, that's not something I have any experience with at all. It's not something that, hearing you talk about it, I'm not sure if I really want to have experience doing that. But it might serve for a good video, making a discussion, some stuff we've talked about. I don't know. I'll put that
Now that
in my pocket.
I think about it, if you don't, then you guys don't know the extent of how people interpret your calculations.
Okay.
Try it for a week, and then you just even better. Use a fake account so people don't know it's you. And when they have people linking your videos to you, saying how you prove that necromancer is bad, and then they kick you, then you'll understand the extent of the damage of not not using the right words, not making sure people understand that that's the upper limit. That's not the general of what they're going to get, especially in fractals.
Okay. I think that's an idea I really like. Whenever Guild Wars 2 is on sale for $10 again, I'm gonna buy an account. I'm gonna be a level 80 necromancer with 300 achievement points, and I'm gonna pug fractals.
No.
If you have 300 achievement points, you're not going to pack fractals. I
Yeah.
don't think they're going to let
Nope.
you.
No one's even letting you in.
We'll see. It's gonna be that'll be a video, that's for sure. But, all right, do we want to keep going on that, or should we move on, Mr. Teapot?
I think with the stuff we've said previously in the stream, I think we've covered nasty people and elitism enough. So we'll talk about some viability and diversity. So start off this little segment with how would you define a viable build or strategy? Brazil, you can start us off.
Okay, in Guild Wars 2, I think it's a very interesting situation. I would consider literally any build viable for doing dungeons. That's not to say you will be as effective at killing a boss the fastest if you're using a Nomad's Tank Warrior with Mace. You won't kill things the same speed, but you can do the content, and you can. There are videos that are older now, but people in my guild doing Lupicus with no armor, no trinkets, just weapons. Killing Lupicus completely naked with like nothing. There is a video of the Twilight Arbor forward up Nightmare Tree that Dub. I don't know if anyone remembers Dub now, but I think it was Dub. Maybe Haviz was in it. These are people from RT that I guess haven't been in the Guild Wars 2 community much. Not that I'm aware recently. They did that Nightmare Tree with, I think, naked thieves with only caltrops on dodge. And they killed the boss. And, like, it took an incredibly long time, but they did it. So I don't think there's really anything, like, I don't have much experience with WoW, but from what I understand, if you want to do raids, you need, like, raid gear. Stuff like that. That's my understanding. Guild Wars 2 doesn't have that. If you want to go do a dungeon, you can go in with white level 75 armor on a level 80 character, and you can probably do the dungeon if you're in a group of people have any slight clue of what's going on. Basically, as long as they're able to see the screen, like you can go in a dungeon, you can do it. The experience may not be that great. It may take a really long time. You may die all of the time, but I think technically it would be considered viable, and I think, yeah, it maybe not optimal, or whatever you're associating with optimal. Viable, I think I would consider anything to be. I guess you can even more or less speedrun with, like, more defensive gear. As long as, I guess if you're attaining to the concept of speedrun, which is like killing what is necessary, doing things as quickly as you possibly can, you can probably more or less speedrun with maybe a little more defensive gear or different builds, whatever the case is. Optimal, no. You won't be optimal in a speedrun environment with knights or soldiers gear. But again, like optimal at Tequatl. If you want to speed kill Tequatl, you probably want Soldier's Gear to do that as quickly as possible. Berserker's Gear offers you no advantage there. It's disadvantageous to, I guess, use Berserker's Gear in a situation like that. And as far as build diversity goes, there are a lot of fun, like Boots from World of Enders, who's on this podcast from time to time. He has a series on his channel that he does with Wooden Potatoes called Boots Bad Builds, and they kind of I guess they, what's the word I'm looking for? They purposefully go through and formulate kind of gimmicky or maybe stuff that's dumber, just for the fun of it, and just to make a build, that's one. And they talk about why it works, the mechanics of it, stuff like that. And I think all of that stuff is fun, but in a speedrun environment where there are particular builds that fill particular roles better than other builds, I would prefer builds oriented to stuff like that. And I guess pug runs where it's not as much of a concern, for the most part, I don't have any problem with people doing whatever they want to do. As long as I'm able to go in and, do what I want to do, more or less, and they're able to do what they want to do, I'm fine with that. And open world content, I see minion masters running around Curse Shore all the time, killing trash mobs. Open world stuff, I don't even know that there's really any reason to bring it up. But I think everything kind of just works and it's supposed to work. But I guess that's really kind of what I have to say on that. I guess it depends on how much you want to, what viable means to you, how you kind of define it and my definition of viable, again, that may not be Nemesis' definition of viable. He may consider, like, I think in your video, I think you said the meta says that, only, like, a few classes are viable and only, like, one build per class is viable. I may be misquoting that. I don't remember exactly what you said. Something, yeah. Again, that definition, that may be, you may be trying to portray the average person's definition of viable, average player. And if that's what they consider viable, then their definition of viable is not my definition of viable, and there's a bit of a breakdown in communication there. So, I guess that segues into, if you have anything to add for that, I think, go ahead and go for it.
That's part of the problem. We agree so much on many things, and we had a really in-depth discussion, and we both contributed so well. But this is a 2-hour video already, talking really complex things. A lot of people, the majority, are not going to watch this to see how things work in depth. They're going to get kicked. Someone is going to link them a link to Meta Battle, and they're going to have Meta Battle teams, and there's going to be 3 classes, and this is viable. So that's the definition of viable. It's basically a 3-sentence story. The problem is because of the bad AI, because how the game, not necessarily the bad AI and other things we discussed, viable and optimal kind of became very separate. Like you said, you can actually play naked and still do something that's viable. My definition of viable is a build that does something very well. Doesn't matter if it's DPS or, in our case, AoE DPS, single target DPS, something that does really well. A build that is the opposite of going Sentinel gear and auto-attacking with a scepter as a necromancer. That's like very dumb thing to do. So, that's pretty much what I wanted to say on that topic. And when it comes to diversity, they advertise so much. That's what got me in the game in the beginning. Oh, I want to make a short comment on the side. In dungeons, I want I'm going to say that everyone should play Zerker in dungeons. It's been done for such a long time, and people obtain so much gold from it that if you don't do it, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage. No matter what class you play, dungeons, like I said, I'm hoping they're going to be turned into mini dungeons and it's going to be official. And just a fun way, a quick way to get some gold and do something like that. And it's done, it's made for Zerker. And I think skipping, like I said, should be official and made more dynamic and fun and stuff like that. When it comes to harder content, the game was advertised so much in the beginning as they didn't say they are making it DPS only. No one ever said that. They said you're not going to deal with annoying downtimes when you have to buff. That's why we made buff on the fly. They said you don't have to wait for a tank or a healer because every single class can be tank or healer. They didn't say there's not going to be healing or tanking. They never said that. And it's so weird to say, we don't have healing. Here are some healing traits and some healing gear. It's ridiculous. It's mental, but people still believe that. There was this one guy that whispered me was really arrogant, and I went arrogant back. I was trolling him because I thought he was trolling me. And I said, man, you really don't get it. It doesn't matter what you want or what some random person wants. It's about the average player and what they consider fun and how to grow the game. I'm not going to repeat myself. And he said, oh, really, average player? I'm an average player. I'm the top player from Guild Wars 1 and I'm leader of this and this community. And he said, I don't know if I have the screenshot. He said, everything except Zerker and Assassin, all the gear stats are there for bad players. In his opinion, and he said he's the top player of I don't know what. He's like the most famous person in Guild Wars 2. I never played Guild Wars 1. He's the most famous player in Guild Wars 1. Bunny something. Does that name say anything to you? Bunny. Doesn't matter. And in his opinion, and I'm not saying he's not a skilled player, there are a lot of people who got so professional at soloing stuff after thousands of tries that they're actually very good players, but they still lack the mindset. If you think a company invested so much money and they have like publisher money and investor money, and they said, okay, what's the plan? Okay, listen up. We are going to advertise this game in the way I just said, and then we are going to make only 2 build sets viable and make 25 different build sets for bad players. But we are not going to tell them that. That's absurd. How can you even think that? I think that's the mentality currently. That's the Zerker mentality currently. I think they broke away from the Holy Trinity and they tried to, like they advertised, make more dynamic fights when you don't have to stack, ironically to what's happening now. You don't have to wait to rebuff. You don't have to wait for a tank. If you're missing a tank, any class you're playing, you can be a tank. Or you don't even have to be a tank. You can play a different playstyle. Everything is more dynamic, more fun, more on the fly, more has a flow to it, something that was never seen before. And that's why the complexity skyrocketed into 27 different sets. And if we can just have PvE that requires, not necessarily requires, but facilitates the mix and matches of all of these sets, instead of just having 2 sets that work and everything else doesn't. And it works only in a few dungeons with a few classes. That's, again, it's absurd. It's beyond ridiculous. And it's the grand illusion. As long as you're playing the class that is good and you enjoy playing the meta builds, if you're lucky to make that, if you enjoy playing that in the first place, oh, I'm so much better than everyone else. No, you're not, because everyone else is doing it as well and you're not making profit. I keep saying that. I think I said it like 10 times, but it's never enough. And it's not beneficial in the long run for the game. I want to play the game that was advertised in the beginning, where all stats combination are useful for something, and none of them are a requirement. You don't have to be Zerker and you don't have to be Rabbit. You can be something in between, but you have a great complexity to choose from. What's the point? In Diablo 3, again, that was, they advertised, they said when they initially released the build system, until they changed, they realized that's a really dumb idea. They locked, anyway, the initial build system where you unlock skills, they advertise like 7 million possible combinations. I'm like, this guy is retarded. How are you going to even balance that? This is a marketing tactic to fool people. And then they reduced it to 300,000 possible skills. But in the end, everyone, in the beginning at least, everyone made the barbarian. They went full Leroy Jenkins. They were just killing mobs before they could one-shot them back. That's how it was in the beginning, Diablo 3. They were one-shotting AoE before they got one-shotted back. It was really absurd. So what's the point of having hundreds of skills and 300,000 possible combinations if only one is good? That's actually, in gaming, is sometimes accepted because people are under the impression they are so much better than the rest and they are better and blah, blah, blah. And it's their ego and bragging rights and whatever. But if you do this in any other field, in advertisement and stuff like that, it would be considered like a fraud. Like, I'm giving you the illusion of 17 choices, but only one is good. And that particular good choice is tied to a paywall. Good times. It's absurd. And it's even more absurd that people are going for it.
I'll just bring up a brief point from about diversity from EcoRI, who has informed me that a second place in a fractal tournament ran 2 Guardians, and one of them wasn't running Berserkers. They were running Power, Toughness, Vitality, and they were also running Altruistic Healing. So, I mean, just from that, there's a little bit of give in it, obviously, and I don't know the details of this. Maybe you could explain it to us, EcoRI, but they obviously use this to their advantage to counteract the presumed lack of, well, a Guardian who isn't running Berserkers probably isn't going to do as much damage as one who is. So
I can give insight into that.
Oh, please do.
So that was something that happened. King, I think they're a European guild. Maybe they're in I have no idea. They hosted a fractal tournament shortly after we hosted our first dungeon tournament. And a lot of the guilds, see, fractals are more difficult than dungeons are. They are. And a lot of people that competed in the tournament, there's one particular good guild that I can think of. Their mentality was, we are going to speed clear, and then they ate shit at Mossman over and over. I think is what happens. I may be remembering that incorrectly. But in a lot of other guilds, I think they thought, okay, we're just going to full DPS, we're going to go. And the team that got second place or whatever it was, they played safer. They did encounters slower, but because they went, I guess they took the slow and steady approach as to the all-in, one mistake causes us to restart approach. They got second place, or I think it was second place. So, like, this is another thing. I think you can apply that probably to, actually, I have a good example. On the official forums a while back, there was a thread about a group looking for people to do dungeons with them, and they were advertising that they had like a full tank guardian that would keep everybody alive, so you could just DPS as much as, or a full support guardian, so you could DPS as much as you wanted to. And I thought, this sounds really interesting. I'm going to join, and I'm going to see what it's like. I was not expecting it to go well, but join the group. There was, full support guardian playing a hammer build. And there were DPS elementalists that were stacking might constantly. There was, I think a thief or a mesmer that was doing stuff like blinding on the thief and, portaling on the mesmer. And it was organized, and they were, going through the dungeon. And I was just playing my warrior in there. And after it was all over, they said thank you and whatever. And then after a few minutes, one of them whispered me and they said, "Aren't you Brazil from D&T?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And they started asking me what I thought about their run. And I replied, I said, I thought it was actually really surprising. I wasn't expecting it to go well. I was expecting it kind of to be a clusterfuck, but it went well, and I was surprised. And the Tank Guardian didn't make a huge difference. Like, it was surprisingly a very, very pleasant experience, and I would have no qualms or hesitations about doing it again because it was smooth and pleasant, and whatever. And I had fun. I enjoyed it, and so like, granted, if you're playing in a guild of people where everyone is skilled at the game and understands mechanics well, you don't really need a support guardian to keep everyone alive because people are more self-sufficient than just an average pug group. But I don't know if it was demonstrated to me that the Guardian could, consistently do that in pug groups, or if that's the kind of group they were going to take. I don't have a problem with taking a Guardian along. I don't have a problem with it going just a little bit slower and, not kicking, and instead of kicking the Guardian because they're playing a support build or whatever. It was a good experience, and it was kind of fun. So
About that,
yeah.
I made I'm not sure. While back,
The
I made the
immovable
full healing.
object.
The immovable object. Oh, that's my go-to build whenever bugs are really bad. There were at least 20 times when I was in the volcanic fractal, and people were dying over and over and over, and then they were quitting and they were arguing with each other, and no one was blaming me because I was the necromancer, and most of the time I was the last one dying. People don't even know that if you do like a fast left right, you can dodge the incoming arrow even without blinding. I was just doing that, and I would have soloed the thing, but as soon as all the lava things spawn, I cannot solo that. And like I'm like, guys, I'm getting my guardian, no one will die. And everyone like, wow, what are you playing? And it has so much healing that we uh, not only, I mean, besides the DPS uptime that it provided, that you don't have to dodge and disengage so much to heal, we actually did the fractal. And I don't have AR on the Guardian because I never bother getting much AR. And I was doing a lot of fractals that normally would have ended right there. And yeah, if you, it's not a hammer build, it's with the mace, but you can actually tank for people. You engage first, and you act as a corner. People corner stack, so they DPS as the mobs come around the corner. Well, you go in, you put all the healing, and people just come near you, and they can DPS without actually corner stacking. And to some point, it's a little bit not faster, but not slower either, because by the time you corner stack and you drag the monsters around the corner, if you get people to actually, as soon as they trust you and they see all the amount of healing that goes, just go from trash mob to trash mob to trash mob, not going around the corner anymore. And you gain a bit of time there. And like I said, you don't have to lose DPS uptime. And it actually works. And that's the beauty of it. You can play more dangerously 5 DPSers, or you can play 4 DPSer and a tank, and overall you do about the same. You have this about the same speed in your average scenario with pugs. And like I said, every time you kick, I said like 5 times already, I'm going to say it again. Every time you kick a person, if you don't get another person in within the next minute, you're already falling behind. And that's a fact.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will conclude the diversity thing with asking both of you what kind of diversity would you like to see? Because I personally don't understand how there can't be an optimal way to do things. I mean, people from guilds like Death Taxers, they will figure out the best way anyway. So eventually there will be an optimal way to do everything. It doesn't really matter how hard you try and balance everything. There's always going to be, I don't know, even if it's say 2% more, or even 1%, something will always be better than the other. This particular combination, this particular strategy will be the optimal way of doing it. But what would satisfy you in terms of build diversity?
Well, I can answer that very easily. I don't want everything to be viable. I don't want to just blindly choose things and everything goes. No, I want out of all the possible power builds, only one or two of them to work. One should be for melee and one should be for range. That's the point of finding the optimal way to play. I, at the same time, want to have an optimal equal value as a condition, as a tank, and as a healing. And no matter how good the theory crafters you just mentioned are, they're never going to figure out a Zerker build who can survive versus invincible mobs that expire after a timer. So you can have multiple paths. One could be played with like speed clearing tactics, like stealthy and bursty kind. You could have an equivalent path which requires like a lot of dodging and keeping DPS uptime, and I think condition damage is really optimal, because power type damage, you have to be there as the damage is done. You can be running and damaging at the same time, because with condition build you can stack a lot of conditions and then you run for a while and it continues to do damage and stuff like that. And you can have certain events where you just have to remain alive, maybe even protect a certain NPC, not by bursting down stuff, like actually healing him or just staying alive as the NPC does something. And that could really play on the support side of builds. And again, the smartest people are going to find the most effective support build, the most effective condition build, and the most effective power build. And I want that, otherwise there's no more need for me. What should I do builds for? But I want it to be equivalent. I don't want just one set and a few classes to work. It's all in the PV. It's not in the balance. It's not in the PV. It's not in the build system. It's in the PV. The build system is more or less fine, but you don't have a setting to use it in.
Okay. Brazil?
I think this is something people are going to really get mad about this. But I think class balance needs to be considered first. And I think, like, before you get into build diversity and stuff, like, doing speedruns and stuff right now, there's not really any... This is just a personal thing. There's not really any reason to play a necromancer, like in a super speedrun or in a record run, really. There's not much reason to take one along, because you think of, like, what you see in record runs now. You see elementalist stacking a warrior for banners, and then like a guardian or a thief or something like that. And I think a lot of the weight is placed on elementalist, and I think a lot of that is because of conjured weapons. It used to be a long time ago. It's been a while since this was a thing. Fiery Greatsword used to do quite a bit of damage, and it really altered how the meta went. And people would, go into corners, the FGS, number 4, number 3, and the boss would die. And that was fun for a while, seeing how it worked and being like, oh my god, this is crazy, this is awesome. Then for me, for a friend of mine in my guild named Colsey, and for other people, it got old. I got tired of seeing elementalist stacking and FPS, and when it happened, knew that ISPO would be the next go-to. So ISPO was already a thing, but now deep freeze as much as possible, and ISPO number 4. And if you're really crazy, you'll ISPO number 4, evade backwards, and then the channel will start, and it will put all of the little ice bow projectiles in one spot. So it does tons of damage opposed to lots of damage. And again, that was funny. And I remember when we were talking about speed clear record rules and stuff, and what should be allowed and what not to be allowed. This was probably about a year ago at this point when we had our last discussion. I kind of brought that up, but I said I don't think it's necessarily an exploit, so I don't think there's a reason to ban it, but I don't like it. And there are people more or less in agreement with I don't really like how the meta focuses around ISPO, and when ISPO, it may take a long time, but it'll probably get nerfed. I'm sure it probably will. After
They
ISPO,
already said they will. They
yeah.
will nerf it.
After that goes away, it's going to be Meteor Shower and Lava Font, because that already does a ton of damage, and people know it does a ton of damage. But people will just abuse that in place of, ISPO afterwards. And Elementalist is a class that offers so much. I mean, granted, on a staff Elementalist, you're like a piece of paper. If you get hit by something, you die. And you do a lot of damage to compensate for it, and you do lack some blast finishers, and there are other builds focused more on blast finishers and maintaining might stacks while sacrificing a little bit of damage. But I think, and this is again just personally for me, Necromancer does pretty solid DPS. Potential to average, I think it's pretty sustainable. You can sustain your own might stacks, everything like that. When Reaper comes through, I don't know that Necromancer's position is necessarily going to change a lot, because it still, I think, will really only do damage. Granted, Reaper looks fun to play. Reaper looks cool. But I almost feel like because Necromancer doesn't really have access to any good blast finishers, it has like 3, but they're all shitty, like stacking might, or just, it doesn't necessarily have access to group support. I kind of want Necromancer damage to be like so far and away better than everyone else that you would, consider taking one in a record run, because its damage is so high. And right now, I guess Elementalist does that because this is moving away to, I think it's getting a little further away from what. It's just kind of an abstract thought I have on the matter.
Well, you can, if they leave dungeons as mini dungeons, you can give like on leech form like a 10% party buff, so it gives something to the party, so you can play the bursting game. And I don't think it's going to unbalance PvP that much. A 10% increase for 10 seconds, nah. The PvP setting is so dynamic that it doesn't matter. Those 10 seconds that don't matter that much. But when you have like 100 buffs and stuff like that in a speed cleaning scenario, then it does matter. When I was invited last time in the podcast, I mentioned and even in my video I said the effectiveness of buffs, the importance of buffs skyrocketed way out of proportions. If we get proper PV content, buffs are not going to be this valuable. They're going to be... right now everyone buffs, but not that many people debuff, which is weird because vulnerability is sort of more important than 25 stacks of might. I'm not sure, I didn't do the math, but 25 stacks of might is 900 power, right? Something like that? Or am I wrong? Doesn't matter. Is a few hundred power. How much is 25 stacks of might? How much power do you get?
I don't remember off the top of my head, because it got nerfed, but...
It's 25 times... Is it 30?
I think it's 30.
Stack?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 30
well,
power and 30...
750 then.
700.
So it's pretty significant.
And in a power build, you have about more or less 3,200 power. So that's math. Another 900, you get from 3K to 4K, okay, on average. And 25 stacks of vulnerability, it's 25% raw damage increase. So right there, it's more effective to debuff than to buff. And especially since might is kind of hard, it's harder to keep 25 stacks of might than to keep 20 stacks of vulnerability on the target. And more people buff than debuff, which is mental. So I think in proper PvE content, there is going to be it will balance it out a bit, and debuffing is going to take a more honorable place. And hopefully we will have a PvE scenario that we don't have to wait and rebuff. We can do it on the fly. And you don't have to get necessarily 25 stacks and just burst right then. And if you don't, your effectiveness drops significantly and you die. And all that stupid nonsense. You will get up to 20 stacks of might and up to 20 stacks of vulnerability. And it's really dynamic, and you won't have to keep stopping and going around the corner. I want a PvE scenario, PvE setting where I could just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And how smooth it goes is based on the player's skill, not where he figured out to stack. Because once you figure out to stack, you just stay there and drag the mobs and burst. It's exactly the opposite of what was advertised in the beginning by ArenaNet, what drew me to the game. And a lot of people got drawn in by the same thing, and it wasn't the story of the game. It wasn't the story, it wasn't the eye candy cutscenes, it wasn't Mag, that stupid NPC. I hate that little guy. Oh look, they are giving, they are feeding prisoners to devours. Something like that. The way he says devour,
crackle and spit.
It's stuck in my head. It's so annoying. The game was good for the build system, and they should honor their original advertisement, what they promised in the beginning.
All right. Do you have any closing thoughts on that, Brazil?
Nope.
Before we move on to some questions.
Let's go to questions. Let's do it.
Just go to questions right now?
Well, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'm fine as well.
All right. Our first question. This is from. Well, actually, let me just test if the questions actually work.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Right. Okay. It works.
Okay.
The first question, all the way from the back of the start of the show, was please comment on the ether path mechanics, such as multiple bosses which work together or large environmental effects. Are such mechanics the way fights should be, in your opinion?
You want to go first, Nemesis?
Well, yeah. No, I don't have much to say. Okay. Yeah, it should be like this, more or less. But I want something even more complex than that.
I think stuff like that is cool. I don't have a problem with the way the bosses are in Aetherpath. I think the Clockheart is cool for the most part. I think Sparky and Slick are, they're okay. My problem with Aetherpath is all of the fucking holograms and all of the stupid puzzles that people think are really good, but they're just annoying. And whenever you get good at them, again, you can just do them really quickly. They don't matter. They just piss you off and get irritating. I think the foreman or whatever, the char with the axes that spins, I think that's a cool boss. My problem, I guess this could be another topic. Bosses in Aetherpath are fine. I don't have any problem with seeing stuff like that. I don't have any problem with seeing stuff more complex. I think that would be awesome. But I would prefer not to see stupid, irritating, unnecessary puzzles that aren't really good in the first place. Granted, I think puzzles can be implemented. I just don't think Aetherpath's implementation is...
Okay.
I guess just if I had to give an example of a puzzle that I really liked, the portraits, it's a guild mission. I think it's a guild. I haven't done guild mission. The one in, like, the Char Zone where you go into the old Ascalonian mansion and you have portraits and you, like, wave at them and you have to communicate with other people. Puzzles like that, I think, are, like the guild puzzles and whatever, I think those are cool. Either path puzzles are shitty. I'm not fucking yeah, that's my input.
All right. Next question. ArenaNet was talking about having a soft trinity in game. How would you change gameplay to make support and control also viable with damage? I think I somewhat disagree with the premise of this question.
I think that already exists.
Yeah, I mean,
Wall of
with
Reflect is support, Defiant
yeah.
Removal is control. I mean,
What I find weird, the Revenant class is getting taunted, right?
yes.
Well, it's the only class getting taunted, right?
Maybe. I think
Yeah,
Necromancer that didn't get it,
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
no.
and the Guardian didn't get it.
I don't know. I
I
don't think it did.
I don't think so.
I've heard, and this may just be people trolling. I've heard that Rangers Bears are going to get taunt, but
Didn't
I
they-
What's
have
the point of that?
absolutely no fucking clue if that's true or not. I feel like that's just people joking. I don't know if that's true or serious, but I can't. I think maybe Warrior might get a taunt. I think I might have heard that, but I don't know. I think I think Revenant's the only thing I can think.
Well, if we get like 3 or 4 classes who get taunted, then we might get a soft trinity, and we can work with that. And I don't mind the soft trinity; it's fine, as long as it's. When they broke away from the Holy Trinity system, I was expecting like Trinity 2.0, like instead of tank, healer, and DPS, we get all these gray areas in between, and it expands in diversity, and everything is more fluent, and you don't have to wait for a tank, and if the tank leaves, it's not raid over, and stuff like that. We went kind of backwards. Now we have unity. Everything is just DPS, so we just run and burst and run and burst, and it's weird and annoying, and we talked about it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys think any of the professions will be able to have a short bow after Heart of Thorns? I think it's pretty unfair that only 2 professions have. Oh, the spelling is atrocious. I don't even know what that says. I can't pronounce that. Well, yeah, you know what the question was.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. If someone gets short bow, I'm not particularly concerned. I guess it's an option for something, but I don't really have any major concerns or like hopes or anything like that for it.
I
Okay.
don't think it would be so weird if all classes get short bow. It would be the one weapon all classes have. Why? So no.
All right. What do you have you seen the was it Ready Up or Points of Interest? I can't even remember. Was it Points of Interest? But either way, what do you think about the staff weapon on the Revenant?
Well, I haven't watched the points of interest yet, but I read the blog post, and I'm really disappointed that it revolves around healing. I wanted it to be like a really badass, like old sage man melee weapon. Where you can like just fuck people up, like knock their legs out from under them, and like stun them for like 5 seconds on like a long cooldown. Like that's what I was hoping for with staff being a melee weapon for. But like my penis went like just like that whenever that was my reaction. So
Well, I didn't actually see all the skills. I watched it briefly, but I enjoy kind of. Necromancer doesn't have healing on the staff. I mean, it has the regeneration. You can actually perma regen. Doesn't have that much support. We have Guardian, which kind of has healing on the staff, but nothing in the terms of like this attrition condition type support thing. And I don't think that was in the game, and now it is. It filled a little small gap of something that was in the game, and maybe it should have been. So it's overall, it's not a bad idea, because you have to look at it from the angle of what's not in the game yet, and we're going to put what's left out. So yeah.
All right. Here's another one. With access to weakness and chill, would Reaper have a better role at supporting teams? I think this is
Better. That's the problem. That's what I keep telling people.
Debuffing.
Yeah, debuffing, but better than what? I don't want to be OP. I don't want to be underpowered. I want to be equivalent to the rest. That's the thing. I want this to be better for encounters that have really fast monsters, and you really have to slow them down, otherwise you get zerged. And I want it to be weaker for monsters which are immune to conditions, for example. I want it to have its place and its role. I don't want to be like one big pile of everything mashed together crap.
Okay, yeah. I think, well,
yeah.
there are situations where I can see it being useful in fractals for like endless, well, maybe an old dredge fractal. I guess that's not a thing anymore, but I would have loved to have had a Reaper for endless waves of dredge that spawn that just attack you over and over and it never stops. Just being able to chill them and put weakness. But we don't have that anymore, so I don't know.
All right. Do you think that dungeons should be the key focus of PvE, or should they focus on other types of content to develop, be it instance or open world? I mean, we have kind of touched on this. I think the general consensus here is that maybe it would be a good idea to leave dungeons behind and just move on to other things. Would that be a correct statement of you guys' opinion?
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. They've been played this way for such a long time. If they back out now, and people are going to rage. People who got used to doing 100 dungeons a day, they're going to be really upset.
Brazil, do you have anything to add?
No, I think I'm in agreement.
Okay. I think we've sort of addressed this one as well, but do you think that the Berserker meta will still be king in Heart of Thorns?
No, if they have any intention of having their jobs from now on to not get fired for a lack of funding of a dead game, then no, they're not going to be a reigning meta.
Brazil?
Yeah, I hope there are other encounters that like call for specifically for other things. I really hope it's not a repeat of what we currently have, because I'm gonna get bored of that, and I'm sure other people. I will be the first one to say the expansion should have been priced at $10 instead of $60, if that's all we get. So
it's $60.
Well, I don't know. I think
I don't think so. I don't think it will be.
I think the price on like German Amazon was like 45 euros. I think that's about $60.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's
yeah.
correct.
I think that's probably a guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be a little bit upset if it was full price. I'd still buy it, but I think I'd be a little bit sad if it was $60. I think, I mean, obviously no disrespect to them. They're making a good amount of new content, but it's not going to be as much as the original game, and the original game was full price. So
yeah,
I think it would. I don't know. We don't know how much they're really adding here. Maybe they can justify it. Who knows? We don't know. With the Berserker thing, I think, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, I think ArenaNet are looking at forcing you to use different types of damage. They're definitely going to be looking to force you to use conditions at some point. So one way or another, you're going to be using conditions instead of straight power, because we've seen. Well, for example, I mean, hear me out. Hear me out. We've already have husks in the game that take massively reduced damage from normal conventional damage. So conditions are the only way to successfully burn them down. So say if they have a boss or multiple bosses like that, or maybe you have to run a hybrid. Say you have to break while it has its break bar up, it only takes damage from conditions. While it's broken, it only takes damage from power or something. You know, you could. There are all these different situations where they could easily throw it up in the air to mix it up a bit, that sort of thing.
The only thing I wanted to say regarding that, the mentality you have, you have the dragon sickness, the Zerker sickness. It's not about it forcing, it's how you present the truth. It's not forcing so much as giving players who enjoy other stuff, other playstyles, the opportunity to play in that playstyle. It's not so much as forcing one group of people to play differently. It's about opening new doors, appealing to a wider audience. And it's something beautiful, not something like, I'm going to force you. Yeah. And it's still exactly what you said. It's just the wording on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Brazil, do you have
Well,
anything to say on that?
We've talked very briefly about like different paths and ways to do that. And I think if there's like a new raid or a dungeon or something that comes out, and say you progress to where you would have the first event, instead of one event, have two events, and you have to do one of them. And one event is based on maybe you have condition damage and other stuff. So if you decide one day you want to this role, and then you decide the next day you want to go kill the other boss who is susceptible to power, and then you go to where the next event would be. Instead of one boss, or even two bosses, you have three bosses. There's one boss where you have to survive against it. One boss where it can take condition damage. One boss where it takes power. So then, on top of that, you say, it's Monday, tonight I want to do the first event with condition damage, and then when we get to the second event, I want to do the one where we just survive for, 3. And that's cool, you have a choice. The next day, you say, okay, today I want to do the one where the first event we do the boss where it takes power damage. Then we want to go to condition damage for the second one. So you have options. And I think that's what should happen. That's what I would very much like to see happen. Or maybe even to a degree where, say, there is only one boss, and there's a boss that takes power damage, but then around the room, there are like, I don't know, maybe has like turrets or something. They take another type of damage. Or the boss goes on a rampage for a long time, run around, or you have somebody hold aggro on him while everyone else survives, and when he gets tired, you go in and kill him. There are so many options, so many different things, and there's so much potential in the combat system in Guild Wars 2, so versatile. If they release an expansion and it's literally just Berserker's armor and power builds is the best way to do everything, not gonna be happy. It's just wasted potential.
I couldn't agree more. This is exactly what I've been talking about for 2 years now. And the only thing I can add to that is the encounters that require condition damage have specific skins. So everyone knows you're a badass condition dealer. And everyone knows you're a badass healer. And really epic skins that fit into that play style. Like a healing skin looks like something you would find on healer. I don't know. Or a condition build like has like this dark afflictioner type thing with things leaking out of you and plagues and stuff. That would be awesome.
Okay, here's another question. What do you hope for the warrior elite specialization?
Ooh. Do you want to go first, Nemesis?
Uh,
Or do you have much to say?
no, I don't have that much to say. I never thought about this. Actually, I don't
So,
actually play much Warrior.
I don't really know what I hope for here. The primary reason why I like Warrior so much currently is because of its mobility. I like being able to run around very quickly, get from place to place very quickly. I like how fluid the mobility is too. Instead of like blinking, you have leaps, you have rushes, you have whirlwinds. I love playing Warrior. It feels like, what the fuck is this? Oh my god. Oh wow. But playing Warrior is like, it feels like parkour or something, like free running. That's the aspect of Warrior that I really. And if the, I don't know, I guess if the specialization amplifies that or gives like other ways to do that, I hope it's not just like Mr. Tank, we get a break bar and like, I don't really want something like that to happen. I don't really want it to get like, I guess like the dirty fighter, which a lot of people are speculating about, getting like a pistol, having like melee skills and stuff. That sounds kind of cool. I don't know. I guess yeah. You can go ahead if you.
I just figured it out.
Okay.
We can get a Galio type ultimate, like AoE taunt. and
AoE
you
taunt,
get
yeah.
more damage the more things you get hit by, and then you just explode at the end of it.
That sounds
You don't
like,
die, you just explode, and you
yeah.
make like a rippling effect, knockdown, and damage and stuff like that.
I'm having flashbacks to playing Rammus in League of Legends. Haunting.
The Galio
The more
ultimate,
they hit you, the more they die.
Galio, actually, yeah.
Galio ultimate on Elite, that would be really nice,
That would be pretty cool. That'd be really
and it
cool.
fits with the warrior theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
I would like to. I would agree with you, Brazil. I'd like to see a more a more martial class. Just runs up to people, punch them in the face, fires a mace out of a pistol, that sort of thing. You know.
You mean a harpoon gun?
Well, this was a joke from a while back. We were talking about Thief getting mace for one of its weapons, so you could play mace pistol, and the combined skill, like where you have pistol whip or stuff, the combined skill would be putting the mace into the pistol and shooting it out. Which that was pretty funny, but do we want to go on to the next question now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not even sure if this is kind of a troll question, but let's go through it anyway. Nemesis, have you ever played in an organized group? And if not, do you think that affects the way you think about the meta?
Well, I don't even play Guild Wars 2. I'm joking. Of course I have. Of course I have. In the beginning, when I played with the people I know, they all quit eventually, and then I realized the more I made guides and the more I listened to feedback, I realized the kind of people that watch my videos, and most of the people were casual, and I realized that guide making is for casual people, and I realized that casual people are the majority, and I said, in order to make better guides for those people and in effort to continue to improve the way I teach, I need to play as a casual pug player. And I need to follow in the footsteps to see what works for them, not for me. So that's why I pug. Besides the fact that I have a really weird schedule and I cannot expect like really professional players to I'm going to say, okay, tomorrow at this hour I'm going to need 5 people, and maybe I cannot show up, and I can't keep doing that to people I don't even know. Most of the people that I used to play with in the beginning have quit. I mean, almost everyone quit. I'm the last one.
All right. Let's see. Where is that question? I feel like these people are just reading the questions and then asking them again. This is quite unusual, actually. I'm getting some weird deja vu here. Question: instead of power-based encounters, it doesn't matter if it's raw or condition. Would you prefer battles in 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 the living story where damage is done through the environment or something.
In
Not
some
instead,
cases,
in addition.
yeah.
In addition to.
I have no problem with that being for some encounters, but I don't know if that's and having it be like a choice. That's something I'm okay with. But after a while, I think you even had footage of this in your video where you were doing the dragon in the living story and running around getting the fire, like burning the parts of the plants when the dragon. It was from, I think, one of the last living story instances of this season. That was cool. And the one where you went through that like crystal level place, I thought that was pretty cool. I would like to, again, I would love to see stuff like that implemented, but if it gets to be the thing is, if you do a dungeon and that's like the only event for part of the dungeon, people will get tired of it, and there's not diversity. Having it as an option, I think, is probably the best scenario.
Yeah, I think I really agree with you on the living story thing. The last few instances, I was really surprised by how different the encounters with the little mini bosses inside that were. It was, I mean, obviously they were trying to be a little bit reminiscent of Guild Wars 1 there, but I thought, wow, they're really going to try and go somewhere with this. But maybe they are in Heart of Thorns. We don't know yet. But I think mechanics like that, I think I find that really engaging. The way they had that in the living story with the all those crystal dudes and the giant dragon. Yeah. Nemesis, do you have anything
the mentality of when I did the PV analysis, I said at the end of the video, you can have encounters which have different grades of difficulty. You can get bonus loot for making it more difficult. The only thing we have now that even remotely resembles that is the opening the chest in the volcanic fractal, which is crap. I mean, like really more difficult, significantly more difficult, but get an extra chest, like an extra big chest. And that satisfies casual players and hardcore players. Or maybe get a unique skin that showcases that you did that thing and should be really, really hard, like Lich King hard. And then you actually get bragging rights. Then you
I would very much like to see something like they increase the level cap of fractals back up to like level 80, how it used to be, or maybe even higher, maybe to 100, maybe further than that. And if you do, say, like a fractal level 100 that is incredibly difficult and like few people ever do it, and the first time you do it, you get an armor box. And you get to choose like a piece of light, medium, or heavy. Like, I guess how the glorious armor in PvP is or whatever. And you do it a couple of times, and you build up and you have a full set of fractal armor that looks really, really cool. It's already ascended, so like you don't have to make another set of ascended armor. Maybe it already has infusion built into it. Something that's rewarding, very useful, and that also has like a really badass skin that it's just unique that other people may not have. I think something like that is cool. But at the same time, that's not to say it's necessarily better than something people will be able to get in-game otherwise, because you can craft ascended gear, get infusions. But if you achieve something that's difficult, you're rewarded for it in likeness to how the difficult is.
And it has to be based on your pre-preparation build. You have to have the perfect build, and all the events events inside the dungeon have to always have randomized circumstances. So you cannot eventually learn to stay here at second 5, here at second 8, press this at second 9, and you can master it mechanically. You have to be challenged and on your toes, no matter, it should be skill-based, not grind-based. Skill-based and not grind-based. So
Okay.
you cannot eventually figure out the exact location where to stay. The location has to change every single time, and you have to react in real time, skill only. I would do that. I would actually do that.
All right then. Seeing as we're coming up to 3 hours now, here's a nice little short question to finish it off. What has been your least pleasant pug experience?
I'll let you go first.
So many. The least pleasant one was one night I was trying to finish up a build. I was really back when I was still relying on all my income from YouTube. I was pushing myself to make more builds at the same quality and get the gear and a lot of stuff. And I left some fractal runs for the next day. And then I said, okay, I'm not sleepy. I'm going to do it now. And I went in fractals. I soloed the jellyfish thing.
Oh yeah.
I soloed that because they died. They kept dying a lot, and then I soloed it. The second one was the ice one, and we two-manned it. And in the third one, we were cliffside, I think. Yeah, cliffside. And as we were running towards the end, someone said that useless necromancer something, and I said, please, I'm the one carrying you, knobs. And I got kicked. And after I got kicked, I got a lot of mean whispers saying, you fucking knob, and a lot of stuff. And it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and I carried them, and then I got kicked, and they invited a friend. And I got kicked to get one of their friends inside the dungeon to get the reward chest. And I know they invited a friend because they had another pug, and that pug whispered me and told me what happened. Yeah, that was
Me? Ah, man. COE last night was kind of bad. It wasn't a pug group, but it was kind of bad. But recently I haven't. The worst thing that's happened in recent little while has been like people using Sigil of Fire at the end of AC Path 2 and using the lasers to shoot the Ghost Eater, and then Sigil of Fire procs and it just comes through, and that's annoying. But I think the worst, since nothing terrible I guess recently has happened, the worst pug experience I can remember, and I remember it quite vividly, there was a friend I had made at the time doing a raw, and they asked me to do a raw with them one day. I said, sure, whatever. And this was, I think, a little while after I had joined D&T, and I was kind of mad already that day, and they invited people that I have no... Maybe they were friends of Pugs, I don't even remember. But they died at Lupicus, and I was playing Warrior, and they died in, like, Phase 1 of Lupicus, like, the Locust Swarms or something stupid. And so I said, fuck it, I'm just gonna solo. I'll be able to get it done. And so I started soloing, and the whole time I was soloing Lupicus, they were telling me, LOL, just die, it'll be faster, it's better to have 5 people. Stuff like that. And I wasn't saying anything, I was just soloing Lupicus. And I soloed Lupicus and killed him, and immediately after he died, I saw a loading screen for Cursed. They just kicked me out of the dungeon because I didn't die and let them come back and die at Lupicus. That's probably the worst. That's the most memorable experience with pugs I have. But I'm still. I think that person's still on my block list, and I still remember who they are. Yeah.
Remember them with love.
With love, as always.
Yeah.
Love of an ogre.
It's all ogre now. You should just send the one whisper to him buy a new account every day and just start spamming. It's all ogre now to him every time. Okay. Well, seeing as I will also answer this question because I have an experience that it actually leaves me incredulous to this very day. Just picture the scene. It's in Cliffside Fractal, okay, and you get the cultist hammer, and we're running around with the hammer. This one guy, he refuses to let anyone else except him pick, and he starts flaming everyone if anyone tries to pick up the hammer except him. And I try and explain to him, you can't survive with the hammer. It downs you after a while. And you can only survive 40 seconds with it. And he just yelled at me, "Don't tell me what to fucking do," and kicked me. I cried a little inside.
That's like
Oh.
that's like, have a nice day. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We were a lot more organized this time with the entire stream. We talked
Yeah.
more, and even so, we spend more time overall. It's a longer stream than last time.
The
But
question thing was very useful.
Is that the last question?
I think that is the last question.
Okay.
It's been over 3 hours.
3 hours.
So,
Ooh.
Brazil, I order you to endorse yourself
Okay.
before we end the stream.
Well, my name is Dantane. I make Guild Wars 2 videos. I would ask you to go and give me money on my Patreon, but I'm Brazil. I guild called Death and Taxes. I make builds usually for Guild Wars 2 meta stuff. I make condition damage and fun builds too from time to time. That's kind of what I do. You can find me if that sounds like something cool. I also make vlogs and talk about shit, and I play Yu-Gi-Oh! I have my Blue Eyes White Dragon right here. So find me on YouTube. You can search Brazil Guild Wars 2, Brazil D&T, Brazil Death and Taxes. There. On Twitter, I tweet as well. You can be at Brazil D&T. Is it for me? Where can we find Nemesis?
Yeah, where can we find you?
I currently live in Romania. If anyone wants to visit, it's really cheap to get here. No, I mostly make builds for various classes. Specialize in Necromancer for Guild Wars 2, but I plan to extend to other MMOs. And I also make in-depth analysis of the PvE system, balance checks, and all that stuff. Things that require really in-depth analysis in general. And all the builds that I make are aimed at the average player. And you can find me on YouTube, just search Guild Wars 2 Nemesis, or I am one or I am Legion, I am one and I am Legion. Or you can search I am one or I am Legion. You'll still find me. Yeah.
All right, that's fantastic. And as for me, you're already on my stream, so it would be awesome if you followed it. We have a weekly show, and I bring Brazil, and maybe at some point in the future we'll bring Nemesis back as well. He is a fantastic guest. You can subscribe to me on YouTube, where the VODs for this go up, and I also make strange theories about Guild Wars 2. I prove many things, I confirm a lot of things, all using totally legitimate methods. None of it is false. And you can also follow me on Twitter for updates, early heads up of when the stream's going to go live. Well, obviously on Twitch, you know when it goes live, but on Twitter, you can know days in advance. So you can plan your entire day around watching, or even your entire life while I'm watching this stream. I mean, after all, you've got nothing better to do. Come on, seriously. Just watch the stream all day, every day. Spend all your day watching all of our videos. Have 3 tabs open, one for me, one for Brazil, one for Nemesis. Just have the playlist of all the YouTube videos just on loop, just going round and round and round. That'll be beautiful.
Or
So,
you can use the YouTube function to fast forward and hear us all as leprechauns. That could work.
yeah, that will be pretty good. Yeah. In this particular instance, we'll be back tomorrow at the same time to discuss the new Revenant specialization and the Ventari stuff. So come back tomorrow at the same time, 6 p.m. GMT, to hear about that.
That'll be Brazil, Mightyteapot. No, Boots won't be here, will he?
No, it'll be Inks.
Inks will be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get someone else.
We'll
I'll
have a
harass
threesome
someone.
again, just like we did
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
God, that sounded creepy. So.
Yeah, that was a little bit disturbing. Yeah.
Oh well.
Well, someone
any
said
case-
Brazil is my father, so.
Whoa.
Well,
I had
that's
no
correct
idea.
because I banged your mom. So,
Ooh.
And now end the stream quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, quick, close it down, close it down.